Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. We are live. It is Bets and Banter, and the show this week is about UFC 315. It's going down in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and I'm very excited to break down all the action. We've got two title fights, one in the men's side of the game, one in the women's side of the game, so a little bit of something for everybody. A lot of Canadian homegrown talent as well. And we've got two great handicappers to break down this card with us. You know we can't go it alone on a pay-per-view fight week. So you're used to him. You love him. You see him here almost every week on the show. Our guy Wizz MMA back in the building. How are you, my brother?
I'm good. Hoping everyone's doing well and had a good week last week. I snapped my winning streak. Went down 2.25 units or 2.24, one or the other, last weekend. And I feel like, some things really went against me. Like the fight doesn't go for Mason Jones and Jeremy Stevens. That one really hurt. I personally thought Mason Jones was going to implore the takedown threat early and often and find a ground and pound finish or maybe even a submission finish at some point. Clearly only went to it in round one during the last 30 seconds, and same thing in round two. Round three, he decides to start wrestling from the jump, and I was like, okay, cool. Much better position. Did not find the submission. Was going for that Kimura way too long. So that one was unfortunate. And then the only other bet that I had that lost was Misha Tate money line. And I thought the third round was going to be hers, which it rightfully was, and that's what I was banking on. And then I was hoping that she would either land a takedown in round one or round two to bring us back to to glory. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. But back on the horse, still a great year so far overall, and looking forward to break down UFC 315 with the both of you guys.
Absolutely. And speaking of, we got another great guest on the show this week. I call him each and every time he returns, the King of New York, Pepe Silvia, my brother from another. How are you? It's been a long time, my brother. It's good to see you.
Yeah, Liam, Wiz, what's good, boys? Happy to break down this card. Looking forward to these title fights. Kind of lackluster card for a pay-per-view. Not the highest level of fight card for a pay-per-view showing, but I'm looking forward to my cousin Jack Della potentially grabbing that title in the main event. That's a really intriguing fight. I'm looking forward to breaking that fight down, watching it play out. But yeah, good to see you guys.
Absolutely, brother. And in the words of the great Chael Sonnen, it's good to be seen. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Sharpest chat in the game already assembled. I see you guys lurking. So without further ado, guys, let's start with the first fight of the night with our great guests. We got Brad Katona taking on Bekzat Almakhan. And if you guys have been listening to the show for a long time, you probably have heard me run down Brad Katona a time or two. And the truth is, you got to start putting some credit on this guy's name because he's tough as an old leather boot. Like, the guy will go out there and get in a war, get in a serious fight. That John Matsumoto fight, I thought it was close, very close at the end there. And I honestly expected Matsumoto to be able to get some good positions, maybe put Brad away. And even when Brad's taking damage, the guy just stays in the fire, man. He's a willing competitor. The thing is, he's not really a guy that I see as like, man, his skills blow me away in all positions. I just think he's a guy that's dogged, tough. He's well-rounded. He wants to win, but he doesn't really have all the best component pieces. That's why he's got a 500 record in the UFC. He's all right. He's not going to blow you away. He's not the most damaging guy. I think the danger factor is very minimal with a guy like Brad Katona. He did land a couple of decent shots on Gene Matsumoto. He's trying to sit down on his offense more, elbows, knees, things like that, trying to do more impact, but he's just not the most impactful guy. He's not the most dangerous guy, a little bit smaller frame and stature for the division. On the other side, Bekzat Almakhan, he basically landed one shot against Umar Nurmagomedov, and it put him down, right? Kind of got him wobbled, got him off his balance. And I think that when you look at how he performed in that fight, it kind of was a little bit of UFC jitters, a little bit of underperformance. He went out there, he tried his stuff. He's in there with a guy who's a little bit better, and he had some moments, but ultimately he just didn't have the skills to win that fight. I think Bekzat is an exciting prospect. I think he's a guy I want to see more from. Do I know he's going to go out there and beat Brad Katona? No, so I'm not going to go lay the price. But ultimately, I think he wins this fight. I do think he's the more dangerous fighter. I don't think he's bad anywhere, and I don't think Brad Katona can really blow him out of the water. I think a win for Brad Katona means he got off on some wrestling, he got to the top position, maybe he just landed a little bit more volume, but I don't think he's going to blow him out of the water, get a finish, anything like that. So if that's the case, I think Bekzat, he's the guy with more finishing upside. I think if it's a decision, it'll probably be competitive. Brad normally doesn't run away with it, so For me, it just feels like Bekzat probably wins this fight, probably a negative EV, decision if it gets there. But ultimately, I just think Brad Katona, it's kind of crazy that he hasn't been knocked out. He is tough as shit. He does take a lot of clean shots. And I think Bekzat could be the one that puts him down. So I'm curious what you guys think about this fight. Wiz, we'll kick it over to you first, brother. How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, I don't have too much thoughts on this fight specifically. Still early on in the week, and this was not one of the bigger fights on my slate that I was trying to pay attention to early on. But both these guys, they bring, I would say, somewhat similar skill sets. But the one thing that I can say is Brad Katona has proven that he can consistently come in and deliver in the octagon. And he fights really close. Last time out against a very game Jin Matsumoto, where you can kind of make a case that he may have won that fight. Bekzat, obviously, just the one fight in the UFC against Umar, and he had his one moment, but really I'm not going to give him too much for knocking him down. He was then controlled for almost 10 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, just over 10 minutes for the rest of the fight. He held Umar down, didn't let him really advance or take advantage of the ground game. But I think it's one of those cases where maybe the odds makers are favoring Bekzat over a somewhat okay performance against a title contender in Umar. All that to say, this is dog or pass, and I'm more so leaning towards the pass side because I just think we don't have enough info on this guy Bekzat. So this is more of like a prove it spot for me. So for me, I think it's dog or pass.
Fair play, my man. The Kazakh warrior still has more to prove to our guy Wiz, and I understand that. Bekzat really hasn't done much in the UFC, and I do talk about proven UFC commodities. That he is not, but I do think as a fighter, he does have some skill and some talent on the tape that I've seen, so I'm curious to see if it translates at this level, certainly. Pepe, how do you see this one going down, my man? Is there any value to be had?
I'm not really sure if there's value to be had, to be honest, but from my perspective, it's favorite or pass for me personally, just because, we have a 27-year-old Kazakh fighter. And, a lot of times when the UFC brings these Kazakh guys over, then they start training at American Top Team. And oftentimes we see them get a lot better as their UFC careers go on. So I could see there's just way more upside, way more potential for Bekzat to look a lot better than he has. Well, the thing is, he's looked decent on the regional scene, but he's facing a lot lower level of competition. It's kind of hard to grade how his skill set will translate at the UFC level. The thing is, when he's fighting Katona, and like Katona's upside to me is like a 29-28 close decision, whereas I think Bekzat has a lot more room to, really hurt Brad and really pull away, potentially get a finish. And, I like that he's at an American Top Team. He's only 27 years old. So I just think there's a lot more potential for him to show up and have like a career best performance. Whereas I think Katona is really capped in his upside. The thing with Bekzat is, he's been stuck on his back before, but you can't hold it against him for getting controlled by Umar Nurmagomedov, one of the best bantamweights that in the division. If Merab wasn't in the division, he would have the title right now. So yeah, I don't know. For me, there might be a number where I'd be willing to play Bekzat because it looks like people are liking the Katona side, and I totally get it because certain bettors will. They like taking the underdog who's way more proven on tape, done it against UFC level competition. But even if you look at Katona's wins in the UFC, they're not like impressive to me. So that's the thing. Like Katona's beat guys in the UFC who aren't even really that UFC level. So I think there's just so much more upside with Bekzat, and the number keeps coming in, maybe I'll play it if it continues.
Yeah, I think the worst bet I might have ever placed in my life, it's certainly right up there in the bottom 5, is Jesse Butler plus 500 against Brad Katona. He looked every bit of it. And my man in between getting his ass whooped is on the corner fixing the handlebar mustache. I wanted to puke in my hand. So ultimately, I think Brad Katona, a guy that I haven't given enough credit to. So my goal on this breakdown was just to give him a little bit more credit than I have in the past. But the same problems that I've always seen are still there, I think, which is he's not the most dangerous guy, and it's a cage fight at the end of the day. I think if you said to me, like, somebody got splattered in the first round of this fight, I would be a lot less surprised if it was Brad Katona than Bekzat, and that's just the way I see it. So for me, fun fight, interesting fight. We'll get to learn a lot more about Bekzat, but ultimately I think he wins the fight. All right, fellas. Next up, we got Daniel Santos taking on Yeong Lee. And I'll tell you, boys, I have almost nothing to add to this fight. I have to go back and tape more on Daniel Santos. This is a guy who keeps getting pulled from his fights. And when you're a guy like me who tries to go really deep, I prioritize the people that I expect to make it to the contest over everything, and then we'll work from there. So he'll be one of the last people that I tape this week. On the other side, I was, thinking Hyder Ramil was live against Yeong Lee. Goes out there, absolute car crash of a fight. Didn't expect that, but I just take my hat off to both guys. They just fought like absolute warriors, stood in the pocket, traded until one man fell. And at the end of the day, maybe that's a learning experience. Hey, I'll be a little more technical next time, but I'm not really looking to invest in either one of these guys this week. Unless something really jumps out at me on tape. But I'm going to kick it over first to our guy, Pepe. How do you feel about this fight, my man? Kind of came together a little bit shorter notice. I think Yeong Lee was supposed to fight, who was it, Gavin Tucker? And unfortunately, Gavin Tucker not going to make it to the fight. So our stand-in Canadian is Daniel Willie Cat Santos. How does he do?
Yeah, it's a really exciting fight. Definitely going to be, a high-paced fight, in my opinion. So I thought Lee was this side at plus money. You can see the market has come in quite a bit on Lee in the past couple of days. He was, even up to plus 160 for a little bit. And I saw that, I knew the line was way off, but I was waiting until there was a little more liquidity in the line before I played it. I ended up playing it at plus 115. And I texted a couple of my friends. I think this fight is going to end up in the pick'em range, and a couple hours later it's a pick'em. But the reason why I like Lee at plus money was because, first of all, he's 29 years old. He's a really big 145er. And the thing about Santos is I like him as a prospect. He's good. He's exciting. He puts on crazy fights, but the guy is small for 145. He's not a true 145er, and that's the big issue in this fight. Even if you watch the Castaneda fight at 135, Daniel Santos doesn't look like he's bigger than Castaneda, and Castaneda is not even a big 135er. Marcos is way bigger than Castaneda when they fought, way stronger. And there wasn't a big size advantage at all between Castaneda and Santos. And in the Castaneda fight, Santos gets rocked multiple times. That win over John isn't even aging that well. I don't think Castaneda has a win since that fight. He's kind of shown who he is as a fighter, gotten exposed since then. And then after that fight, he fought Johnny Munoz, and you don't really learn anything from that fight because Munoz isn't UFC level. He just pulled guard the whole time. So didn't test Santos at all, didn't test his striking defense. But the thing that I can say about Santos is, he seems to have really good cardio, really good pace. But I think Lee, with having such a big size advantage, I think Lee's going to have a lot more power in this matchup. And I think he can use his strength to leverage some grappling if the pace of Santos is becoming a little too much for him. And, Santos will try to throw up submissions, but they're low probability, arm bars off his back. He will try to scramble a bit, but I think over time Lee will be able to grapple enough to potentially just keep him down. And then on the feet, I think Lee is a bit more technical. I think he hits with more power, and, he's going to have a huge size advantage. And so Santos, he has good pace, good pressure, but he doesn't have the greatest accuracy on his strikes. He's super hittable. He's been rocked multiple times in the UFC, super open to getting rocked. So I think Lee can hurt him early. I think he could potentially finish him for the first time in the UFC, or he can grind him for a decision, kind of outstrike him from the outside, and then, leverage his physicality to get some potential grappling going. But, I wouldn't want to be laying heavy juice on Lee just because he needs to prove it a little more before I'd be willing to lay heavy juice. But, Santos, he's been off for 2 years. He's pulled out of fights multiple times with injury. He's not a real 145er. The plus money was a no-brainer in my opinion.
Makes sense to me, my man. Just looking at the size disparity, a little bit younger, a little bit more active. Like there's a lot of things that I think would push me towards that side or passing on this fight. Not totally sold on the Daniel Santos side yet. Wiz, how do you feel about this matchup, brother?
Yeah, I'll make it 2 for 2 here. Obviously, Daniel Santos going up to featherweight in this matchup, he was never really the biggest bantamweight to begin with. And Jeong Lee is a somewhat bigger featherweight. So he's going to have quite the height and reach advantage here, 3 and 6 inches respectively. When you look at the matchup here, to me, I was initially leaning towards violence, specifically just because of the way that these guys fight. Daniel Santos brings a brawl every single time and throws with reckless regard. Like he doesn't care about his own chin when he goes there and throws his combinations. And Jeong Lee is someone who's, I would consider, very accurate for the weight class. Now, he can also get reckless, and we saw how he got touched up by Haider Amil in the last fight. But I just think that the size advantage here and I think the power advantage for Lee is going to prove to be too much. Initially, minus 150 for fight doesn't go stood out to me, but as the week has slowly gone on, I'm starting to think it's a Jeong Lee finish here, and Jeong Lee KO is at plus 280, so I took a little bit of that on Bet Online. I know it's not the best number, but I'm in California, so I can't really get the most widely available lines, unfortunately. But plus 280, I'm happy with that KO line for Jeong Lee, and looking to see how this goes. I think Daniel Santos makes it to the scale, obviously, just because this is up a weight class and he won't have those weight cut issues. That's usually what has kept him out. It's either that or illnesses from a weight cut. So I think this fight does happen, and I think Jeong Lee takes home a knockout victory this Saturday.
All right, there you have it. I do expect this one to be violent. I expect these guys to go out there and exchange. But I think if one guy has to fight smart and probably get the win, my gut says it'd be Yeong Lee, the Korean Tiger. So we'll see. Excuse me. We'll see how this one shakes out, but ultimately, I'm leaning towards Yeong Lee. I wanted to say, guys, the odds for the first fight, minus 160, plus 140, the comeback on Brad Katona there. So just so you guys have some perspective on these fights as we talk about them, minus 115 for Yeong Lee and minus 105, the comeback on Daniel Santos. This is all according to Bet Online. All right, guys, next up, we can talk about who is more washed middleweight prelim. With all due respect to these guys, I mean, both guys have just not looked like themselves or the best product of themselves in their recent appearances. You've got MAB Marc-Andre Barriault, the local fighter, the Canadian, a guy who typically known for his durability, his willingness to come forward, his cardio, his tenacity. And the problem is, if you don't have a great chin, that style starts to go down the crapshoot pretty quick. And I do think his chin is starting to abandon him a little bit. On the other side, Bruno Silva, his will is starting to abandon him. I don't know if this guy wants to be out there. Seems like he doesn't, to tell you the truth. In his recent fights, maybe he's just cashing a couple of checks on the way out and riding off into the sunset. Very stark career drop-off, a guy who used to win a very high percentage of his fights, dangerous, could knock people out. Now he just has a very hard time getting to his offense in his fight. So I think that this is kind of a violence fight to me. Like, I don't think that Bruno Silva is going to want to be out there with MAB. If MAB starts getting a lot of volume going and starts putting some damage on him and starts touching him up and starts keeping the pace high. But I think there's a decent enough chance that Bruno Silva touches him 2-3 times and he does the dance, and that's the end of the fight. So Marc-Andre Barriault, a guy who's had a pretty difficult time breaking through in Canada, right? They've given him some opportunities, hasn't always gone his way there. And on the other side, like, Bruno Silva, just not a very reliable fighter. So for me, this should be a closely lined fight. I would lean towards Marc-Andre Barriault because I think if you ask who's more likely to give 15 minutes of effort if shit gets hard, like I think Marc-Andre Barriault wants it more. I think he's the tougher guy. I just don't think he's that good at fighting. So hard to trust him as a chalk favorite in my view. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this one, Wiz. What do you think about this matchup? Anything worth getting involved with?
Yeah, this fight is tough to really get involved with because you can see it really playing out two different ways. And I kind of give either way equal opportunity, to be honest with you. Marc-Andre Barriault, someone who has looked really fragile in his last few fights. 2 brutal knockout losses in the span of about 10 months. And I think that's just coming back a little bit too soon for him. Going up against someone who all he really knows how to do is win by knockout. I believe it's 20 wins by knockout in Bruno Silva, but he as well has not looked like himself over the past 3 to 4 fights and has come out in interviews saying that he doesn't like being in there in the cage and is not he doesn't really enjoy the violence. So how are you going to trust someone like that in just any cage fight, let alone cage fight against Marc-Andre Barriault, who if you can count on him to bring one thing, it's cardio, pace, and just relentless attack until he falls. So for me, I think this is just a car crash again, which is why I really like this matchup in terms of just a fan. But as a bettor, I want to stay very far away from it. The fight doesn't go at -200 right now on BetOnline, and I think that's just a little bit too expensive for my liking because I do see a world where Marc-Andre Barriault just, touches him up and jabs up Bruno Silva over a 3-round period and wins a decision. So maybe a poke on Marc-Andre by decision, the power bar. But I ultimately think that Bruno Silva finds the button and knocks out Marc-Andre Barriault here. But am I confident in that take? Not really. So I'm staying away.
Yeah, I might look at some alternate unders here. I don't expect this fight to go very long, honestly. I don't think if you don't want to be out there, Marc-Andre Barriault is the wrong guy to be fighting because he's very enthusiastic about being out there. So I think that it's probably going to end violently. But to your point, it'll be price dependent for me whether I take that swim. What do you think about this one, Pepe?
Yeah, a lot of people. Everyone who breaks down this fight is going to say that, it's a battle of who's more washed and Barriault's chin is gone. The thing I guess I'll try to fight back a little bit is, the MAB getting knocked out by Joe Pyfer, I don't really think that's a huge indictment. Like, Pyfer is a good prospect. He hits really hard. And then, so let's think about, okay, so, before that, he had only been knocked out by Chitty, right? And it was like a glancing, tempo shot that knocked him out in round 1. Whatever. It's not the biggest indictment either. So then he's fighting Stoltzfus in Canada. And, I don't think he really thought of himself as like a chinny fighter or a fighter with bad durability. And I think he just didn't really respect the power of Dustin Stoltzfus, who is someone who, I don't know how many KOs he has in the UFC. He's mostly known as a grappler with, decent submission skills and, a try-hard blue-collar fighter, but not someone that I don't think MAB was really worried about the power coming back. So I think he just fought really reckless. He was in front of, he was in Canada, so I think he wanted to put on a show. And he thought that, if they swung dicks, he was going to be the one that was going to come through because generally he's got pretty good durability. And in these wars, he's usually coming out on top. So I don't think he was worried about the power with Stoltzfus. Now he's fighting Bruno Silva, and he's coming off another knockout loss in round 1. My thinking is that he's probably going to try to grapple in this fight, especially early in the fight, to limit the early power of Bruno Silva. MAB knows that he has the better cardio in this matchup and will be able to fight a lot longer. And then if he tires Bruno out early, he's less likely to get knocked out. The power, he'll drain the power bar, so to speak, of Bruno Silva. So I could see him trying to grapple early in this fight, make it ugly, cage push, do whatever to not be at range with Bruno in round 1 and try to tire him out. And then, this is all just conjecture, this is like what I would be telling him if I was a coach of MAB. Like, let's fucking get this guy tired and then finish him late, So I think that's what his approach might be. Like, why would you just swing dicks again after getting knocked out 2 times in a row? You lose again, your career might be fucking over, honestly. I don't know if this is his last fight of his contract, but, you can't just continue to lose fights in the UFC. And number 2, you have to protect your own health and your own well-being and your own, career. So you can't just keep getting knocked out in round 1 and expect to have, a career at all or a functioning brain. And so in the idea of protecting his health, protecting his career, and getting the win in this particular matchup, it would make most sense to try to grapple and try to slow Bruno down. So I honestly, I kind of like the MAB side. It's super ugly to lay juice. I don't know if I'm going to do that, but potentially looking at like a 2-3 sub angle, if he's going to take this grappling heavy approach, could be a creative way to play this. I haven't decided if I'm going to get involved in that way, but if I was, that's probably what I would do.
Live on the air, I was just adding to my notes, Barriault sub, and then round 2 and 3 into my notes, just because I really like that angle. You don't have to push me too hard on that. And frankly, just looking at the dynamic here, I agree with you in the sense that the longer Marc-Andre Barriault spends on the feet, like the more liability he is, in my view, to get knocked out. So if I'm looking at violence here, I think Mark's best way to accomplish that, take this guy to the ground, make him uncomfortable, make him say uncle, why try and get, crazy on the feet with this guy who's clearly got devastating knockout power. We've seen he could fold up to 10 if you put him under pressure, you put him on the bottom position. Frankly, a lot of guys have taken him down, controlled him for huge stretches of the fight. Wellington Terman and other guys have had success before things went sideways for them. So I think that Marc-Andre Barriault could go out there and implement a grappling heavy game plan here. And it's big enough numbers. I would assume on domestics it'll open even higher, knock on wood.
On top of that, Silva has a really good chin. So even if the fight gets extended and, he's not like taking him down and rinsing him or anything, if he hurts Silva, Silva could panic wrestle and eventually, he showed against Jordan Wright, like he had a pretty slick guillotine. I know that's his only submission win, but it was a pretty smooth guillotine on Jordan Wright. So I could potentially see him getting something like that as well on an injured Bruno Silva.
Nice. Well, I think we all basically see this one pretty similar. Some upside for Barriault. Potentially Silva has some knockout power, but in an extended fight, I think Marc-Andre Barriault more likely to put out more offense, give the judges more to look at, attempt to take the fight to the ground. Like, I just think he's got more ways to win the fight. If it is just a swinging contest on the feet, I think it probably goes poorly for him, but I don't think he's dead letter in that one either, because Bruno's got a decent enough chin, but he's 35. And if you don't want to be there that much and you get hit with 10, 15 of those in a row, maybe you just take a knee and say thanks anyway. All right, next up, we got Navajo Stirling taking on Ivan Erslan, and this is, in my view, a little bit on the lower end of the light heavyweight talent pool. I think Navajo Stirling can turn into something. I think physically he's a good athlete, 27 years of age. He's young. He's got some experience in kickboxing, but I just think in overall MMA experience, 6-0, it's not very deep. It's not very, he doesn't have a great depth of experience as I view it, right? And not very high-level opponents either. I thought his Contender Series opponent, very winnable fight with all due respect. And then in his UFC debut, he goes out there against Tokos. He gets the win. Did it blow anybody's hair back? Did it tell you he's the next guy up in the division? No, it told me he's got a lot to work on, a lot to improve, to get better with. So I think that he has, long-term potential, whereas I don't really see that for Ivan Erslan, with all due respect to the man. But on the other side, it's like the fight's on Saturday. It's two guys right now where if somebody was to go out there and mix in takedowns, try and get to the top position, I feel like Ivan's probably the more likely guy to attempt that. So I just don't really feel great about this fight. Don't feel great about, laying a huge chalk price with a guy like this. But, gun to my head, who wins the fight? I think Stirling wins the fight. I think they're trying to set him up for success in the UFC. I don't think Ivan Erslan's got a super bright future with the promotion, but he's got more experience. He's a guy that went out there and fought for 15 minutes, made a decent enough account of himself. So do I think he's a great fighter? Not really. If this fight just plays out on the feet, I think he's probably just going to be a class below, but it's 205-pound men. They're swinging at each other's head. If he gets caught with a bad shot, Stirling could just go down like any other man. So I feel like, for me, no reason to get super involved in this fight. How about you guys? We'll start with Pepe on this one.
Yeah, I tough fight to bet, right? Stirling, I think, he's only 27 years old, and he looks like he's on. He took his training, his strength training, very serious. Dude looks fucking huge on Instagram. I was seeing, it looks like he's on steroids and shit. But
no, just asparagus. He went to bed early this camp.
Yeah, did you see those pictures of him on Instagram? Guy looks
no,
like
but I'll go look now and
like
bring him up for
Terminator.
everybody.
Yeah, he looks like a science project, honestly. So yeah, I think he had a bad showing in his debut. And the guy he fought on Contender Series, what didn't really threaten him at all either. So he's fought a real low level of competition. So that's why, yeah, exactly.
Good Lord.
Yeah. That's why it's tough to lay the juice on him. Like, he hasn't really been tested by anyone decent at all. So yeah, do you really want to lay minus 300 on a guy who could potentially get stuck on his back? But what I will say is he seems super athletic, super strong. Ivan kind of seems a bit over the hill, even though he's only 33, doesn't really do anything great, is super hittable. And he's been knocked out multiple times, and he's been knocked out by guys on the regional scene who aren't even that good. I'm not talking about the recent ones. I'm talking about a little further back. So honestly, I lean like maybe Stirling by knockout. I don't think, I think that's going to be a common pick, but that's the way I would like to bet this fight, is probably Stirling by KO.
Yeah, I tend to see it the same way. The one thing I would say is I would look at the ITV price and compare it. Just because, like, I have sneaky suspicions if Ivan gets hurt, he might end up trying to grab a hold of him, shoot a shitty takedown type of thing. And I just would never put it past these CKB guys. I think Navajo Stirling might have that little guillotine in his back pocket if he needs it. Pretty long reach, 79 inches. So, if Ivan puts that little head and neck down there, you can probably get a good torque, a good squeeze on that neck. So if it's, 60, 75 cents, maybe we're looking at a different story. But, if you're paying 10 cents more.
Yeah, you got to take ITD, bro. Yeah, I got to take ITD.
Wiz, what do you think, my brother?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to add too much because I do see the fight going the same way. The last fight against Bukauskas, it could have just been a UFC jitters, and it was evident that Navajo really gassed out in that fight towards the latter half of the second round going into the third. So if that happens again and his conditioning is not up to par, and Ivan is able to survive the first round and a half, then things may get interesting. I just don't see that happening. Erslan is a little bit too slow for my liking in the striking, and defensively irresponsible compared to Tokos, who I'm not going to say is defensively responsible, but I think the combination of him gassing out after the first 2-3 minutes of swinging and the UFC jitters, that kind of worked against him. So yeah, I do think Stirling gets the knockout here, but am I going anywhere near to parlaying this guy at juice or anything like that? Probably not, because there's a lot to prove at 6-0. So just like we saw what happened to Bo Nickel, I was way too overconfident last week in him. The record really matters. The experience really matters. And not saying that Erslan's going to come out here and upset Stirling, but there is a shot. So I predict Stirling KO. Am I going anywhere near this fight? Hell no.
Fair play, my man. And I will say, I hope that y'all were here last week. I sounded the alarm. I said, guys, Rene de Ritter is a real fucking fighter and people don't want to give him any credit. And the truth is, he is a real fighter. And now I'm willing to say Bo Nickel sounded like a humble man, a man who had taken his humble pie and eaten it accordingly when he went on the MMA Hour. Sounds like a guy who's going to go back to work, wants to stay active this year, said he wants to get a couple fights in. So for me, I liked everything that I heard from Bo Nickel, but he needed that, man. He thought he was here, and he's back down to earth. Yo, there's guys out there that are better than me at this shit, and I need to get better in order to get where I want to go. So ultimately, that's all that it is, right? Sometimes you got to go out there and find out, hey, I wasn't who I thought I was today. So let's go back to the training room and become that guy. But ultimately, Navajo Stirling, that's the biggest concern for me. It's like the experience isn't really there, but the talent, you could see that it's there. The athleticism's there. Like my guy Pepe said, maybe some supplemental improvements have been added as well. A little bit more investment financially in this guy. And I think all that could pay dividends this weekend in a matchup that I think is favorable. So ultimately, I did see Daz in the chat, 22-1 on the sub. I've made stupider bets, so you probably see me there. I'll say that. All right, guys. Next up, we got Modestas Bukauskas taking on Yeong Cutelaba. And honestly, this feels like a fight that should be lined closely to me. When you look at these two guys, like I would say Modestas maybe has a slightly higher ceiling. He's 31 years of age, has a little bit less experience than Cutelaba, but when you look at where they're at, I feel like Modestas was a guy that was viewed a certain way and had a really shitty run out his first time that he came to the UFC and then got his leg kicked out from under him. Like, it just looked like left for dead. Like, this guy's done. And now he's come back and started to put together a decent run. The Petrino look, absolutely horrible, right? So that's the one where you're like, oh, God, like maybe this isn't going to work out for him. But I do think a lot of that had to do with physicality, power, confidence, right? At the time, Petrino, nobody had broken through that confidence. My man was like, I could take on anybody. I could take on anything. And he took some shots in that fight, but he was able to give it back and put Modestas down. And Modestas didn't seem super comfortable out there. I don't think he felt like he had a physical advantage over him. But when Modestas feels like he's got a physical advantage, he tends to fight a lot better, a lot more smooth. He could be a little bit more dangerous. And I do think he's going to feel that way in this fight. He's taking on an Yeong Cutelaba, going to be a little bit shorter, not going to have as much reach, and not as clean with the striking, a lot more reckless, a lot more wild shots. I think Modestas picks his shots a little bit better. I think he's a little bit more technical. So could Yeong overwhelm him? I think that's his best chance to win. Barnstorm this guy, get a hold of him early, punch him, take him down, try and really put him under duress, because I don't feel Modestas is the best guy under pressure. But we've seen before, there's been times in his Cage Warriors days, he's getting beat up. You start to relent a little bit. Like, I don't have the cardio to keep pushing this. Then he just flips the script on you right away. And I feel like that's a huge concern for Cutelaba, a guy who's always struggled to manage his pace in the UFC. Done a little bit better job in his recent fights, but still, we just talked about Ivan Erslan, maybe not the highest level guy. He's going to close decisions with a guy like Cutelaba, and I feel like that speaks to where he is. He's a 500 type fighter in the UFC. I feel like Modestas has a potential to be a little bit better than that, but I feel like his physicality and his durability has always been my biggest concern. Now, I'm always worried this guy's going to get clipped and get hurt, and Yeong Cutelaba is pretty reliable to go out there and get violent and get crazy and try and make something happen. So for those reasons, closely lined fight, feel like it should be, and I don't really have the strongest opinion, except that I would be surprised if this one went off 15. I don't think it's impossible. Maybe Modestas dances around the outside. It kind of paints that picture. But ultimately, I feel like Cutelaba is going to go out there and try and make it so you got to kill me or I'm going to kill you. I'm curious. We'll start with our friend Wiz. What do you think about this one, brother? Light heavyweights, closely lined fight. Any value to be had?
There's one look that I feel like you would like, Liam, because here's the way I see this fight going down. If it's on the feet, Modestas is going to be able to outpoke Yeong Cutelaba. The guy doesn't really have the most power, and Cutelaba is going to try and land the kill shot. Or it's going to be Yeong shooting takedowns, whether he lands them or not. As the fight goes on, he's going to start gassing out just by shooting so much. I think fight ends by sub isn't a bad look at all. Both these guys have 3 submission wins, and then Bukauskas has lost once by submission. Cutelaba has lost 4 times by submission. So I think at +6, +700, that's not a bad look. That, along with Modestas sub at
Speaking my language.
13, +13 or +1400. I just could see a very sloppy takedown from Yeong and maybe the second or third round, and Modestas maybe capitalizes with like a guillotine or some sort of front choke to end the fight. So those are the only 2 pokes that I'm interested in this fight. I think it's an absolute coin flip here. just depending on who gets their game off early on. So if it's on the feet, I do think Modestas is going to just cruise by to a decision personally. So Modestas' decision is something that I'm going to be looking at after I do a little bit more tape. But Yeong, if he does land those kill shots, I don't see a path for him to not win by knockout. There's a lot of different outcomes is what I'm trying to say. So coin flip is reasonable here. But yeah, fight ends by sub, and Modestas sub is what I'm looking at here.
Well, gun to your head, who's going to win the fight?
Gun to my head, I'm going to say it's Yeong Cutelaba.
Okay. I love picking these pick'em fights where, you know, it's a highly volatile fight because, you know, there is a big range of outcomes of how the fight could play out. And, you know, especially with Cutelaba, a lot of his fights are lined pick'em because he's one of the most highly volatile fighters on the roster. You know, sometimes he fights a little more intelligent. You know, sometimes he's able to get the knockout, overwhelm fighters. And then other times, you know, he doesn't have the cardio to maintain his game. Like in the Kennedy fight, you know, Johnny Walker fight, you know, he's getting his game off and then things go wrong and they go downhill really fast. But, you know, what you do notice about these guys is, you know, Cutelaba has fought a way higher level of competition. You know, the guys he's losing to are all ranked much higher than Modestas Bukauskas. And, you know, I think early on in the fight, like, I guess it depends how Cutelaba approaches this fight. Like, okay, so we'll say his past two fights, he beat Ivo Erslan and Ivan Erslan. You know, there's a chance that, you know, both those guys don't have games as well put together as Modestas, and we could potentially be overvaluing Cutelaba. And, you know, so the thing is with Cutelaba, like, it really depends on how he approaches his fight. So sometimes he approaches it like he just goes balls to the wall, goes crazy, you know, goes after his opponent really fast, goes for a ton of power takedowns and like burns his energy out real quick. And then other fights, he takes his time and is a little more methodical. I could see him being, I don't really know how he's going to fight because, you know, if you think about Modestas, you probably could overwhelm him and hurt him early and knock him out early. So his coaches might be telling him, you know, go fight that way. This guy's chinny, you know, he can get backed up. He can get overwhelmed. You can get your game off, get him out of there quick. But also they might be telling him, you know, listen, fight smart. He doesn't have a lot of power. If you preserve your cardio, this guy has good cardio too. You don't want to be outmatched as the fight goes. Make sure that, you know, maybe fight smart. Take him down, try to hold position. Don't rush a finish. And so we could potentially see Cutelaba fight smart where he's going for takedowns, not rushing position, not trying to get an early finish, and grind Modestas out, maybe win by decision, a control-based decision. The thing is, we haven't really seen Cutelaba be able to put a coherent 15 minutes together very much. You know, even the Erslan fight, like he barely won that fight. He was super sloppy in rounds 2 and 3. And I think Erslan just made some really bad mistakes that I don't really think Modestas is going to make. So overall, I kind of like Modestas's game a little bit to shine in this fight. I could see him, you know, overcoming some early adversity and then allowing his ability to fight 15 minutes really be the difference maker in this fight. I've liked what I've seen from him. I know he was fighting that complete fraud, the Brazilian, in his last fight, but Modestas,
I keep trying to believe that Rafael Cerqueira is going to be like, I'm like, no, he's a great black belt. Like he trains with the right people. He's going to go out there and implement a strategy where he attempts takedowns. And my man stands against the fence and just lets people throw every shot they want. And I'm like puking in my hands, please.
Well, it's like, I mean, to be fair,
it doesn't exist.
Ivo Erslan overwhelmed him in like 30 seconds. I mean, the guy's got a ton of power early. And maybe Modestus is getting better, dude. Maybe, you know, he's only 31. He seems to be growing into his frame. I like that he's definitely like fully invested in this as his career. You know,
100%.
I think at times Cutelaba has maybe been on the fence about like, am I going to retire? I think he's talked about it at him before. I have a family, you know, I can move back to Moldova, you know, live there. Whereas Modestus is like, I'm all in on this. I'm training with Tom Aspinall. I switched camps. I'm at a good camp. I'm on a win streak. I got some confidence going. Let me just make sure this guy doesn't nuke me early. Let me fight smart, be on my bike, keep moving, tire him out, and then eventually get a finish in round 2 and 3. I'm kind of leaning that way, so I'm going to go with Modestus. I think he might be the side here.
Yeah, I think we're ultimately in agreement. In a closely lined fight, I think Modestus gets the win on gut instincts here. I think he's just a slight level above a guy like Yeong Cutelaba. To your point, though, since he's gone and worked with, I believe, Eric Nixick at Extreme Couture, he has been a little bit more controlled. He has been a little bit more thoughtful with his fighting, but it's very hard to take somebody who's like a danger, all action, like brawl, and turn them into something different. And sometimes when you do that, you take away what makes them special and what makes them competitive with everybody, you know? And I do think a guy like Modestus, if you make it a clean fight, if you make it a technical fight over 15, he's probably going to have a better chance to win that. Whereas if you make it, you know, a really chaotic fight and you put him in some danger, I think that's the best chance to beat him. So it's an interesting one. I'm curious to see how both guys approach it, but probably be keep my hands clean at this one. And to your point, you know, my gut instinct says like somebody's going to hit the deck here, but then you just look and you're like, I can see both these guys trying to be very conservative and work their way to a decision. Like on the Cutelaba side, using the wrestling, try and press that. On the Bukauskas side, touch, go, and just try and win a 15-minute decision that way. So I'm not going to get involved here in all likelihood. Interesting fight. All right, next up. I was watching a bunch of tape for this one, boys. And I got to say, I'm not really sure what to do with this except to say, like, it's an unplayable line on Jasmine for me. Maybe I could get invested with some props, figure out something to do on that side of the game. But ultimately, you know, going back and running the tape, one thing that really jumps out to me is she gets popped on the chin, like, pretty routinely. And it doesn't show in the stats, right? Like, you look at no knockdowns absorbed. She's a tough woman. Like, you talk about toughness, this woman will get hit clean, keep walking forward, hit clean, keep walking forward. She is a zombie in that way. She should take that name from Priscilla Cachoeira, whose ass she beat. But when you look at it, it's like she's walking onto a lot of damage. And when you look at Fatima Klein, like smaller girl, right? Mostly known for her grappling, her wrestling. Jasmine kind of mugged her in those phases, right? She's big, she's strong, she took her down, got on top, beat her up. But when it was on the feet, she's getting beat up a little bit, right? She's getting touched with some good hands, and that surprised me, right? On rewatch, I forgot that in the third round, like right away, she got buzzed, and she had to start getting to the wrestling and start really getting desperate with it. You look back at the Natalia Silva fight. I mean, it's a minor miracle she didn't get knocked out in that fight. She absorbed a ton of damage. Both her eyes were shut. She got her ass beat. 10 ways to Sunday, tripled up on strikes. Every time she attempted a takedown, you know, the good takedown she attempted, she ended up flat on her back because the hips of Natalia Silva proved to be too strong, whipping her over, just throwing her to her back. And it ultimately told me there is a level where Jasmine is going to really struggle. But the question I have is, can Jessica Andrade make up for this massive size disparity? You just look at these two women, like they look like they're different weight classes. I go back to the Shevchenko fight for Andrade, and that's where I feel like she's going to get finished in this fight more often than not, is because when Valentina Shevchenko decided I'm going to take her down, she picked her up, put her on the ground, and then beat the shit out of her because she was a way bigger woman. She was way stronger. She could do anything she wanted to her physically. And Jessica Andrade is a great fighter, right? Very good ground player. She has overcome size adversity before. But at the end of the day, her best work is at 115 pounds. Much like Amanda Hebos and some of these other women, they can fight at 125. You give her a low-level opponent, she go take care of business, show you what time it is, right? Real skills versus girls that aren't really meant to be there. But when you start putting Jessica against the best girls, the most physical girls up a weight class, it's a lot tougher for her. So for me, it feels like a very binary and quite a violent fight, honestly, because you look at what Jasmine does on the ground. She is one of the most violent women in the UFC, period, point blank, right? I talked about Jillian Robertson. People laughed at me because I called her the unstoppable force. Last week before she was fighting Marina Rodriguez, she has as many finishes in this fucking promotion as Amanda Nunes. Stop with the slander. She is one of the most dangerous women in the UFC. If you can't stop the takedown, she can beat the shit out of you. That's the truth. She's going to beat you up from on top and try and take your arm home, try and take your neck home, right? She'll do those things too, but she's going to make you pay for taking the bottom position all night. Jasmine does the exact same thing. If you want to be on bottom, no problem. I'm going to drop elbows. I'm going to punch you in the face as hard and as many times as I can. She's a violent woman, has no mercy on top. I like that about her. On the other side, if this is a fight on the feet, if they are just striking for 15 minutes, there is a very decent chance, in my view, that Jasmine hits the deck for the first time, because at the end of the day, she does not have very good defense. She is a willing participant in a brawl. She will get in your face and keep taking shots and giving shots. And if she can't get the fight to the ground, or if she ends up in the bottom position, she can get damaged up. So for me, the right girl's favored, but the line is out of hand. And unless she's able to get consistent takedowns, she's probably going to get her head popped back a couple times in this fight. She's probably going to take a couple clean shots. It doesn't take great sophistication to hit Jasmine Jasudavicius with strikes on the feet. But that being said, I think it's going to be a fight that takes place mostly on the ground. I think she's going to get her down. So money line side, Jessica Andrade. How I'm looking to play this, some kind of violence in all likelihood, because I think that the ends KO, I think, has value in this fight. I'll leave it there. All right, we'll kick it to Pepe first. How do you see this one going down, my man? I know you like some Brazilian women with me. We've stopped Brazilian hate before. How do you feel about this one? Do we have to stop Brazilian hate again?
I think I kind of have the inkling that Andrade is kind of, on her way to being done, fighting at the highest level in the promotion. She's had a really great career. I never like when, it seems like the UFC has kind of used her to prop up other prospects that they want to, send to a title, because
1,000.
She takes a lot of short notice fights. She takes a lot of fights that aren't wise for her career wise, and like getting back to the belt. They say fight at 115. She fights at 115. They say fight at 125. She'll go up, and there's really no rhyme or reason when she's jumping up to 25 or down to 15, really doesn't make any sense. And I hate when fighters do that. Amanda Ribas has done the same thing, and it's boned her over career wise, because it's what are we doing here? 4 years ago, Andrade would be, a minus 250 favorite. But, she has shown that she's slowed down. She's not the same fighter she's not the same fighter who knocked out Chukagian in round one in a fight that ultimately led to her fighting for the title against Valentina. So, and Jasmine, the opposite has happened. She has improved so much over the past 4 years ago. 4 years ago, she was, her striking defense was trash. She needed takedowns. Here, against Cachoeira, she knocked Cachoeira down. I don't think a lot of people saw that happening. I wouldn't be surprised if she had a little success on the feet. Me personally, I'm not going to lay the juice on Jasmine. I think you nailed it. I think, a lot of Andrade's fights, tend to end ITD. I think if I were going to target something, it would be something like an under 2.5. Because if Jasmine gets on top in round 2, I could see Andrade, waving the white flag, and, Jasmine either getting a ground and pound or a submission. But yeah, if Andrade is able to keep it on the feet, she's obviously going to be either super competitive or winning clearly. You can't rule out a potential knockout on the Andrade side, but yeah, I like the under 2.5 plus money still.
I like that as well. I've talked about in the past, one of my favorite bets that I ever hit was Erin Blanchfield and the under 2.5 at plus 540 against Jessica Andrade. If you look at the history of her career, she basically either wins her fights in dominant fashion or gets finished in the first 2.5 rounds, more often than not, right? Not every time, not a 1-to-1 relationship, but just more often than not. And there was tremendous value, I thought, at that time on that prop. I'll have to look at those markets again this week, because I just think the correlation with Jessica Andrade, getting put in really bad positions and then deciding like, let's live to fight another day. You know, the UFC loves her. She wins a ton of fights. It's not like she can't go out there and compete. Even if she can lose 10 fights in a row and then knock somebody out. You know, she's that kind of woman. So for me, I just feel like the UFC knows what they have with her. Dangerous, fun, goes out there to put on exciting fights. But sometimes if it's not going her way, hey, let's take the check, let's go home, and we'll do it again next time. And I just think that ultimately that's the way I'm looking for, my investment in this fight. Find some way to violence here. I know people love to bet on women's fights to go the distance. I get it, right? But I also look to be a little bit contrarian, a little bit counterintuitive. And I think that in this case, you have two women that have some big liabilities defensively. And on the other side, like potent offense, right? Jasmine's ground and pound, vicious, man. She'll fuck you up. Jessica Andrade's ground game, very violent offensively. Defensively, leaves a lot to be desired, right? So I think that that's what creates an interesting dynamic here.
Something interesting I just saw is the past 3 times that Andrade has been taken down, she's been finished in round 2. That's 3 times in a row. You know, each fight she got taken down, she ended up getting finished in round 2. Blanchfield, Suarez, and Shevchenko. Kind of gut feel is Jazz gets the round 2 finish here. Honestly, I was leaning that way anyways, and it seems like the stats back that up also.
Yep, I'm taking a glance at some props here. I'm seeing that some domestic props have just started opening as well. So very curious what we end up getting on some of these fights. Wiz, how do you feel about this one, my man? We got women's violence going down. Do you think we're out to lunch with our takes on the plus money here, or what are you thinking?
Pepe, he stole it. That was the one. It's round 2, but specifically round 2 KO this time, in my opinion. Jasmine against these smaller girls, she tends to go for the crucifix a lot, and she's really good from that position. And now with the 12-6, the elbows being legal, Jasmine's just nasty when it comes to the ground and pound on the mat. And last time out, she almost finished. What's her name? Bueno Silva. Same way. So I think it's a Jasmine finish. I was going to play the round 2 knockout at plus 1,700 on BetOnline, and then just the knockout straight up at plus 750. That's what I'm looking at. I think she's good juice. The issue for me with Andrade is that she doesn't seem to be taking this camp seriously. She's only recently started working out. I think May 2nd she was in the sauna. Hasn't really posted too much training content at all. And then you look at the side of Jasmine, and Jasmine's obviously all over Twitter and responding to tweets, which you never want to see. But I think career trajectory-wise, they're going in opposite directions, and the line indicates that. So I think it's the rightful favorite for Jasmine. But let's not forget, Jasmine is 36. She's going to be the older fighter coming into this matchup by 3 years. So that doesn't always mean anything, especially in WMMA where we don't see as many finishes. But when you're going up against a finisher and Jessica Andrade, who's real only past the victory here is that knockout, I think that it might be worth a poke to play the Andrade KO just to cover yourself in case something like that does happen. But ultimately, I do think it's a finish for Jasmine. I don't think Jessica's going to be able to stop the takedowns. So for me, it's Jasmine inside the distance, KO, round 2, a couple different angles.
There you have it. I'll be looking at some kind of violence angle, but I'll tell you what, at minus 110 for the fight not to go the distance, it's a lot less appealing to me. I'm typically looking at big plus money on the women's fights not to go. So I guess they're seeing, some upside with Jasmine's finishing potential, as well as Andrade, right? She's a proven knockout artist. You see the market is respecting her knockout ability in this one. But, the things that just jump out at me on paper, like, again, Andrade submission 20-1. You got a girl that's going to be shooting at your hips all night. She's got a pretty proven guillotine choke, in my view, for this level. So do I expect it? No, but I'm a little bit surprised by that pricing to just gut level. So I'll have to do a little bit more research and see what I end up going with on that fight. But ultimately, violence is my predisposition there. Next up, fellas, we got Mike Malott taking on Charles Chuck Buffalo Radtke in the prelim headliner. And I wanted to see, where this card placement was. Mike Malott, proper Mike Malott, has a brother in the NHL. He comes from a family of athletes. The guy's clearly, a physical specimen. But there's been some questions about, maybe his cardio, his conditioning, right? The fights that have gone longest for him in his career tend to be the fights where he struggles. Round one, this guy's a banger, man. Go out there, throw some crazy shots, hurt you with clean boxing. He's got some body kicks as well. He's got a great guillotine choke. He's put some guys away. UFC level fighters outside the UFC, Solomon Renfro, what's his name? Adam Fugit. Like he's gone out there and done the thing, but ultimately, I still have my questions about Mike. I think he's a talented guy. I think he's got good skills, but I just worry sometimes about him putting it together for all 15 minutes at these big chalk prices. Even the Mickey Gall fight, I think people forget because he absolutely starched Mickey Gall in that fight. Mickey was landed. Mickey was walking him down. He was putting some offense on him. And if you pressure Mike Malott, I think that's the way you get to him, right? Like if you look at that Neil Magny fight, where is Neil Magny better than Mike Malott? Nowhere, right? Mike is clearly better than him at just about every aspect of MMA, any way you want to do it. They have a jiu-jitsu match, I think Mike wins. They go out there, if they box, I think Mike wins. But they have a 15-minute fight, and Mike just couldn't put it together for the full 15 minutes. It kind of showed, like, the mental pressure got to him, and he collapsed completely at the end of that fight. Like, some guys you'll see, hey, I'm tired, I'm fatigued, grab a hold of somebody, hold on for dear life. Hey, I get to the end, raise your hand, finish line. Some guys can't do that, right? And everything falls apart. When one thing goes wrong, nothing goes right again. And that's just what it seemed like to me. So that is my biggest fear for Mike coming into this fight. Again, where's my gut at on this one? It's looking at violence, because I think Chuck Buffalo has huge defensive liabilities. Like I think you can put this guy in bad positions. I think you can hurt this guy. But I also think he's going to come out to swing. He's going to come out to try and hurt you. He could put you in a bad position too. So he just seems like the kind of guy that, doesn't give a shit, right? Where he's fight in front of a hostile crowd. He'll go tell them to, eat shit and where they can put it after the fight. And, he's that kind of guy, right? So I don't think he cares he's going to fight in Canada. I don't think he cares that people are going to boo him on the way out. Some guys get rattled by that stuff. I think he's going to be like, yeah, give it to me. And whether it goes well or it goes poorly, I think ultimately Radtke's going to bring the violence here. He's going to try and make this a scrap. So I like this fight to be more violent than that last one with Trevin Giles. Trevin Giles, with all due respect, is a guy who's been having trouble staying conscious for 15 minutes out there. So I think he was kind of content to make it to the finish line there. And I don't think Chuck Buffalo is going to play that way. I think it's going to be a more violent fight. And I think Mike probably just has better skills, probably puts him down in the early going. But, if you said like this becomes a tough man contest, who wants to be out there when shit goes sideways and gets more violent and more dangerous? Maybe it's Chuck. So for me, that's why I like violence more than Mike is a big chalk favorite here. But ultimately, gun to my head, I guess Mike Malott gets it done. Let's say first round club and sub. We'll kick it over to Wizz. What do you think about this one, man? Welterweight contest. Two guys that are both making, looking to make a statement, right? Because you have Carlos Prate's knockout loss for Radtke. That one kind of set him back. He had some momentum before that. And Mike Malott, he's still trying to wash that Neil Magny loss out, because people haven't forgot. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, being honest, this is one of the few fights on this card that I have not really taped to the fullest extent. So I'll keep it very brief. I'm not the most inspired when it comes to this fight. I think it can go either way, and usually when I lean that way, it's dog or pass. I think Radtke, although not fragile, but I mean can be finished. He can also present some major flaws in Mike's game in terms of being pressured up against the cage and trying to really test his wrestling here. I know that Mike Malott's going to be the much better grappler here, but Charles Radtke's submission game is also not one to be overlooked per se. But on the feet, I think Mike Malott's going to be able to land whatever he wants, and he does have the opportunity of winning by knockout here as well. But yeah, I just need to go back and tape this fight a little bit more before I give any like solid picks. But I will post them on Twitter once I do so.
Hell yeah, brother. I'm glad to hear it. And I'm glad that people in the chat showing love to not only the great panel members, but also that RDR fucking let's go. Let's go. I'm still not fucking over it. Pepe, how do you feel about this matchup, my brother? We've got a interesting showdown here. Chuck Buffalo, a man after your own heart, I'd assume, with a name like that.
Yeah, and especially cashing the plus 185 against Urbina. But this is just my reaction. My thoughts on it is I think the under could be a trap. Honestly, like I do get where you're coming from, where Radtke is going to force a fight. Malott has a lot of finishes. The thing is, like, it's definitely a volatile fight. I just wouldn't want to be laying a bunch of juice on fight doesn't go the distance minus 200 because I do think Malott could potentially take him down and just like grind him from top. And Radtke is intelligent enough to not get submitted. You know, we've seen him in previous fights get taken down, and you know, the Piersma fight where, you know, as the fight wore on, you know, it ended up going to split decision. It's because he was able to get grappled by a guy who's just a pure grappler and, you know, a regional guy, you know, something Malott would be able to do quite easily. So the thing is, like, on the feet, Malott is a lot quicker than him. His striking has a lot more speed to it, but Radtke is just more of a dirty fighter. Like, if he's gonna like make it a dirty fight, push him against the fence, force the fight out of Malott, and Malott isn't able to get the grappling going, then I could potentially see Radtke winning this. The thing is, I'm not sold on Radtke's cardio either. Like, he has been finished multiple times to the body. You know, the Montalvo fight was a bad look. I know he's improving. He looks like he's fucking shredded now. You know, at VFS, you know, they're obviously he's taking his career very serious. So I think he is improving, but he hasn't really put a great 15 minutes together, right? So the thing is, it's hard to get an accurate picture about how good Charles Radtke actually is at this level. You know, like the Blood Diamond fight, I don't think was a great look, to be honest with you. And like, he's gotten finished against Prates, who is obviously a high-level fighter, and then he has 2 early finishes. So I think the jury is still out on Radtke as an overall fighter. You know, there's too many questions for me. I could see the fight going a lot of different ways. I wouldn't be surprised if they're at a similar skill level and the fight plays out really close. Obviously, you're going to want to have the Radtke side of things. So I'm not looking to play Malott. We've already seen him quit once before, and that was absolutely pathetic, really, you know. So I'm completely staying away from this fight. I don't want anything to do with it. I could also see Radtke as potentially being underdog bait, where, you know, Malott actually shows that he's the much more skilled guy as the fight progresses and, you know, starts tuning him up to the body, and Radtke slows down more than you thought he would, and Malott just kind of owns him. So I'm staying away. I'm going to watch this, see it from an entertainment standpoint.
Yeah, one thing that jumps out to me is, like, I feel like both these guys have kind of fought like a very manageable level of competition, and when they haven't, they've lost. So that for me is like a little bit of a red flag. I would say overall, Mike Malott has fought a better level of competition, but it's not like a massive margin, right? It's just a fairly small gap. But the thing I like a little bit more about Mike's game is that we've seen him go out there, and to your point, like that last fight against Trevin Giles, 15 minutes. Is it going to blow your hair back? No. Was it a super impressive performance? No. It was a clean 15-minute win, though. And looking back at a guy like Charles, I mean, even that Blood Diamond fight, like, I understood why he was heavily favored there. I was like, Blood Diamond is terrible. Like, just looking at his skills on paper, he just had no skills. You know, he could kickbox a little bit. That's it, right? It's like he really had no wrestling or grappling to speak of. And for me, like, if you gave Blood Diamond to Mike Malott, he's finishing. Like, that's just the way that I see it. So maybe that's why I'm giving Mike a little more credit. I think he's a slightly more dangerous fighter, even against like a higher quality foe. But Charles is the kind of guy, like, you give him an opportunity, he'll take it and run with it. So I'll leave this one on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, I'm not surprised why Malott played it safe in that last fight too. He came off of like the Magny loss, so he just wanted to see one go through the hoop, play it safe, and just like, you know, he won easily, and he was able to go 15 minutes, kind of build his confidence back up. So yeah, I could see him, you know, looking even better in this fight.
And Giles, you know, I think people forget, was winning against Prates like pretty cleanly until he got knocked out. Like, he was backing him up, taking him down, putting him on the fence. Like, he kind of did everything right and then died. So tough look there. Trevin Giles, a better fighter than his run out in the UFC. That's the truth. But we can move along to the next one. Speaking of fighters that have had a tough run out lately in the UFC, right? We got Benoit Saint-Denis, and you know, people are lighting him up for not taking the Gamrot fight on short notice and these kind of things. I think people are kind of delusional about that, right? Like, You go from fighting a guy who's got, a jiu-jitsu background, but basically gives up a takedown for free in Joel Alvarez, right? Like, and that's a game that gives and takes, right? I thought Benoit Saint Denis could have put himself in the finishing guillotine on the first exchange, but I also thought, there's a chance he just gets free 99 takedowns whenever he wants them in this fight. And meanwhile, you look at a guy like Gamrot, he's an excellent wrestler. It's a completely different matchup. He's a good grappler. He's an excellent wrestler. So it's just a different game. I think that when you look at, where Benoit Saint Denis is, if I was his manager, I'd have been like, Gamrot, yeah, fuck you. I would have hung up the phone. Are you insane? But now you say, hey, Kyle Prepolek, a 35-year-old guy, a guy who washed out of the UFC, who's 0-2. Is he a bad fighter? No, he's a fine fighter. If he was fighting some other average guy from Canada or some other average guy, at the very bottom rung of the UFC lightweight division, I'd give him more shrift in this fight, right? But I'm going to give him short shrift because I think Benoit Saint Denis went to the very, very deep end of the pool, right? He's fighting title contenders. The last two lightweight title contenders, Dustin Poirier, Renato Moicano. Tough guys to beat, right? Some really special fighters. And you look at those fights, did he go out there and make a complete fool of himself? I mean, against Renato Moicano, he got beat by a better jiu-jitsu guy in jiu-jitsu positions. He got humbled in those ways. And ultimately, I think that's good for his game. You got to know there's guys better than me at this, so I can't just rely on this. I got to have broad skills. I have to know, hey, how do I approach this guy? I thought the way to beat Moicano was obvious. Strike with him, right? Like the way to beat Moicano for Benoit Saint Denis is to strike with him, not to grapple. He tried to force a little wrestling and grappling. Moicano told him what time it is, right? He was just a better wrestler and grappler by a substantial margin. And I think that Benoit Saint Denis, he took a shit ton of damage against Poirier. He took a shit ton of damage against Moicano. Let's not jump back into the deep end of the pool. Let's get a winnable fight. I honestly thought Joel Alvarez was a disastrous booking for him. I thought he was probably forced into that one. So when Joel Alvarez is out of that fight, thank God. Let's get him a reasonable fight. Let's get him back on track. Let's get some confidence back, and then let's start moving our way back up the division. He's got good wins, right? Thiago Moises, Ismael Bonfim. The guy's got good wins. But now you got to talk about, all right, we got a Benoit Saint Denis who basically went in there with Dustin Poirier, got some good takedowns off, but put his head in a bunch of guillotines, took a lot of risks, gassed out too quickly, and he had a staph infection. It was visible. He said, I've already treated it. I'm fine. After the fight, he goes, I was lying. I didn't treat it yet. I need to treat it. I'm not fine. It looked like that, right? I've watched every Benoit Saint Denis fight prior. I had bet on, what's his name? Eliezer Zaleski dos Santos in his UFC debut. I was like, what on earth is this guy going to do to a guy who's been like a really seasoned UFC veteran up a weight class on short notice? I was like, he's fucked. I bet that. I bet the ITD. And what did I learn about him? The guy's tough as an old leather boot, right? And what did we see in that last fight? Moicano's on top of him, beating his ass. Bro, the guy's just finding any way he can to stay in the fight. Like, he's that kind of dude, right? Soldier. He will go out on his shield. You got to kill him, right? Dustin Poirier put him in the box. Like, shit happens, right? It's a cage fight. And at the end of the day, I feel like he had put Dustin Poirier through hell for 5 minutes. He couldn't get him out of there. He really tried desperately. Man, sometimes that's a fight game, right? You only got 5 minutes to work. You go out there, you give everything. It didn't happen for you. He was still trying to pursue the fight and got killed. It happens. And Dustin Poirier, I think people forget that those guillotine attempts, you can't just put your head in guillotine attempts over and over without getting tired. It's exhausting, right? You have to fight out of it. You have to use energy. It's a panic-inducing thing to be deprived of oxygen. So what happens? You start to panic. You start to run out of resources. And I think all those things contributed to Benoit Saint Denis having 2 shitty fights in a row. And now people a little bit down on him in terms of the perception coming into this week. I thought Joel Alvarez and him, tough fight. I was like, man, he could win it, but it's a really tough matchup to come back to. This seems like a winnable fight for Benoit Saint Denis. I think he's probably going to finish this guy. I think he's probably going to smash him to bits. His will to win is extremely strong. I think his will to make a point after having a couple of setbacks is going to be strong. And I think, unfortunately, Kyle Prepolek, in order to get his ticket back to the UFC, is going to have to take a really serious ass whooping. So I think that's what's coming his way on Saturday. Pepe, we'll start with you, brother. How do you see this one going down? I believe that you told me you were pretty bullish on Benoit Saint Denis in the Joel Alvarez booking. So I'm sure you agree with Benoit being a big favorite against returning Kyle Prepolek, let's say.
Yeah, I don't want to add anything. I thought you did a good job breaking this one down. And to be honest with you, I haven't taped Prepolek yet, so I'm not going to say anything. I get why the line is big.
Fair play. The one thing I will note as I kick it to my brother Wiz is that Prepelec was preparing for a fight. A lot of people are saying, why is this guy getting pulled in? First of all, he has UFC experience, so they know who he is. They know that he'll go out there and give an honest effort. I think he lost 2 unanimous decisions in his first UFC run. So a guy that went out there and did fight the full 15.
Yep.
And he's a guy that's gotten some wins in the interim, right? So a guy preparing for a fight from the local area kind of checks a lot of boxes they're looking for.
If you're losing to Austin Hubbard, I don't think you're going to be beating Benoit Saint Denis, you know.
Yeah, it's going to be a big problem for you. Wiz, what do you think about this one, man?
Kyle Prepelic, the last win for Nordin Talib. And then he vanished. But yeah, I mean, this line opened, the over-under opened at half a round. I don't think I've ever seen that before in my time betting. Which has, in all honesty, hasn't been the longest, but 4 or 5 years, haven't never seen a line open at over under half a round. So
I don't even think I've ever seen that either.
I heard the over 0.5 is sharp.
Yeah, the over.
I would think so, man. Like, I think Benoit's a good finisher, but I don't think he's a good, reliable under 2.5 guy. Like what?
Yeah, that I was very close to just slamming that over half a round. Limits were pretty shit anyways. It immediately got moved to 1.5, and that's where it's at right now, where the unders steamed to -210 currently. So it was the same price, but in reverse, but for the over half a round at -210, as long as it lasted. Yeah, I just don't think Benoit Saint Denis is going to have any trouble taking this fight to the mat. And at any point, whenever he wants, I think he finishes this fight. I think it's just a huge strength advantage for Benoit Saint Denis here. Kyle Prepelic has been in the Canadian regional scene fighting for a promotion called BTS. At least that was last time out. And that's not really where you're going to find the cream of the crop in terms of competition. So without really going too long-winded on something that doesn't need to be too long-winded, I think Benoit Saint Denis wins by finish. Surprise.
Yeah, the last thing I wanted to note here, Kyle Prepelic did suffer a loss since he left the UFC. He lost to 19-8 Shane Campbell at Unified MMA. Shane Campbell at the time was a 34-year-old journeyman, with all due respect. So again, it just seems like a guy who, happy to get his foot in the door, happy to get back here, but ultimately not on the same athletic pedigree as a guy like Benoit Saint Denis. So I think Benoit gets the win here. I think the price is a little bit prohibitive, but ultimately, I'll probably look to get, maybe invested in a round 2, round 3 for Benoit Saint Denis. If they're going to heavily juice this to end in the first round, like, do I think it's possible? Yeah, but have I seen Benoit Saint Denis have to take people down a couple times and have to wear him out a couple times before he gets to the finish? Absolutely. So I think that's something I might look for here. Even the Matt Frevola fight, like, it was a frenetic head kick, but that was a kind of back and forth fight up until that point. So I think Benoit Saint Denis has the tools and the hardware to take over, break this guy down the stretch, be the more physical, superior athlete. I even thought he looked like he was starting to rally a little bit against Moicano after taking the shellacking of a century in the first round. So I think Benoit Saint Denis is built for the long term, but I don't know that he's a consistent round 1 finisher. So for those reasons, I'll probably look at a contrarian later finish for Benoit as maybe my angle on this fight. All right, next up, fellas. I know that my guy Pepe, has made some money with Alexa Grasso. I know that he was there with the submission call when she went out there and took out Valentina Shevchenko, one of a few people with receipts on that one. And, man, it was a special night, plus 660 for Alexa Grasso. However, she's been nothing but a letdown as far as I'm concerned since then, man. Like, I expected her to make level jumps in her game, like the confidence of a champion, the ability to go out there and put together a better 25 minutes after getting some experience. And honestly, I just feel like her ability to win rounds has been audited over the course of a very long time fighting Valentina. And Valentina's a great fighter, right? We'll talk about her as well, a champion. But ultimately, like, you have all this time to game plan, to prepare, and that's what you come up with. That's what you bring to the table. It was an indictment, I felt like, of either her camp or herself or, her performance ultimately. So I thought she laid an egg last time out against her, plain and simple. I thought that was a terrible performance. It reminded me of Irene Aldana, couple eggs in a row from the team. And, I thought Diego Lopes went out there and gave an honest fight, an honest account of himself, didn't get it done. But it's not to say it's a 1-to-1 relationship, but I got to just call it the way I see it, right? I thought Irene Aldana had a chance against Nunes. She didn't even go out there and fight. She left it on the table. And I felt Alexa Grasso kind of did the same thing. When she attempted offense, when she went forward, when she tried things, she had some success. The rest of the time, kind of playing from her back, letting the fight pass her by. Didn't show a great sense of urgency at any point, I felt. So that's not enough for me. And, the one thing about Natalia Silva, I'm going to kick it over to my guest here shortly because I don't have too much to say here. I'm not going to be taking a bet on this fight in all likelihood. If I do, it's going to be in the prop market. It'll be, probably a little bit contrarian. But ultimately, when I look at Natalia Silva, I think she's a very skilled fighter. And that fight against Jasudavicius, she showed she's very technical. She can fight at kicking range. She can box you a little bit. If you come in too close, she'll put hands on you. If you want to grab a hold of her, she'll dig underhooks. If you want to try and take her down, she'll get hips on top. Very good hips. Very good skills in a lot of different positions. So the concerns I have, maybe the most technical grappler she is not. I think she's still a work in progress in her grappling. And I think that maybe that's where Alexa Grasso, somebody who has been putting in that time and that effort in her grappling game, maybe she could go out there and try and find something, make it happen there. I think she does have good hands. I think she might be able to compete in terms of the pure boxing in this fight, but ultimately, I don't think she has anything in kicking range that can really bother Natalia Silva. And I think Natalia Silva is very difficult for any woman in this weight class to deal with that kicking range. I think Manon Fiorot, maybe Shevchenko, these are the kind of women that have kicks to offer at that kind of distance, that kind of power that could really compete with her at that range. But most women can't. And I think that that's going to be the problem for Alexa. She's got to close distance here. She's got to grab a hold of her. She got to get her back. She's got to do something, I think, outside of, 15-minute point kickboxing, or she's going to get fucked up, I feel. Just because I think this girl can land from further away. I think her lateral footwork is a little bit better and a little bit faster. So I think that those are some advantages for Natalia Silva that are baked into this line. Don't feel like I'm getting the best of it on a numbers perspective, but I just think Natalia Silva is the truth right now. And, I thought basically from that Jasmine fight, she's been the woman to beat right now in this division in a lot of ways. She's very clearly a skilled, talented girl with skills in all positions. And if you go back and listen to commentary, DC said, when's the last time we saw somebody make a UFC debut like this? And this girl had not fought in a long time. She disappeared for a while. She already had a lot of pro experience, relevant pro experience, fighting Marina Rodriguez, fighting good girls on the regional scene. So had a couple losses when she was young. And now she just seems like a girl who's ready for prime time right now at 28. Physically, she's there, strong. Mentally, she seems like she's dialed in. There's nothing I don't like about Natalia Silva. So for me, I feel, the way that she loses this fight is like a lot of prospects, makes a mistake in the grappling, gets a little overzealous, does something like that. But otherwise, I just think she's the cleaner fighter. And, Alexa Grasso, just an uninspired performance for me last time out. So don't want to doubt a champion. I think she could come back and win this fight, but I think she's fighting on thinner margins than Natalia Silva. Pepe, how do you feel about this one, brother?
Yeah, the Grasso over Chev in the first fight was glorious. And then going back in the third fight, what felt really good was then taking Shevchenko in the third fight at plus money and going pretty big on there and selling the Grasso stock right there. And
great job.
And then what you saw is that, like you mentioned, Grasso and Aldana, they've both shown that their ability to make in-fight adjustments is just not there. If something is not working, they don't have an ability to change things up. They just continue. They're like a bot. You know what I mean? They only know their game plan. They don't have ability to adapt within a fight, and it really shows their lack of depth in their skill set. They have skills, but there's a lack of depth there. So so Shevchenko audits Grasso in the third fight. She said, okay, I'm going to just keep taking you down and you're just not going to be able to stand up. The thing is, going back, so now she has a completely different matchup. She's got Natalia Silva, who I don't think is going to be grappling in this fight. I think it's going to be a 15-minute kickboxing fight. If someone is to grapple, it's probably maybe Grasso, maybe not. Silva could get takedowns if she wants. Grasso has no takedown defense still. And she just goes for low probability submissions off her back and doesn't try to work her way back up. The thing is, so for this particular matchup, I think Silva is going to be able to have the better of the striking exchanges pretty easily in this fight. When you look at Grasso, opposed to some of the other strikers that Silva has fought, like Araujo or Jessica Andrade, Andrade and Araujo are much more pressure fighters. Like, they're going to be in her face. You know, I think people are going to watch some of Silva's tape and see her fighting kind of close to Andrade, kind of close with Araujo, and be like, Alexa Grasso is, you know, better than those girls. Like, this is a 50-50 fight. Give me Grasso. The thing is, Grasso has a completely different striking style than both those girls. She is not a fighter that's, you know, going to push a pace, going to push you forward. She is more plodding with her footwork. And what you notice when Silva fights someone who doesn't put her on the back foot heavily, and Silva can be on the front foot, and you give her room and space to do her game, she's just going to outstrike you. She's got the more variety strikes. She's got better footwork. She's faster on the feet. It's just, I don't really see Grasso being, I mean, she's going to be mildly competitive, but I think it's pretty clear that Silva is going to be able to outstrike her fairly easily. You know, I think it's going to be a 30-27 Silva. And then Grasso has shown that historically she's not able to make in-fight adjustments to change her game plan to deal with what Silva, you know, the different looks that Silva is going to be giving her. On top of that, Grasso's coming off of laying an egg in a title fight, and she got foot surgery shortly after her loss to Shevchenko, so she wasn't able to train for a while, and now she's fighting the girl in the division with the best striking and the best footwork. I think it's a tough spot. You know, I think the UFC is clearly teeing up Natalia Silva to beat Grasso here, and then be the next one who's going to be fighting either Valentina or Manon Fiorot for the next title, for the title. So yeah, I like Silva. She's my biggest play of the card.
There you have it. My man loves the Natalia Silva side, and you know, I think we're seeing this one largely the same way. You know, there's some decent enough prices on the subs here, but really not enough for me to get involved. I was hoping for, you know, 15-1 and higher type of numbers, and I'm seeing 12s and 10s. So we'll have to wait and see the market develop. But ultimately, that's the only way I would look to get contrarian here. I tend to agree with your thought process. What do you think about this one, Wiz? Are we out to lunch? Is the favorite overvalued here, or is Alexa Grasso going to remind people what time it is?
Yeah, I'm not going to add too much. I'm going to round this one off. I'm a big fan of Natalia Silva. Better in almost every single one of her fights in the UFC, whether in parlays or whether props, money lines, whatever it was. And the only thing I really wanted to add here is the difference in footwork and the difference in just game planning here. Pepe highlighted how Grasso and just largely the Lobo Gym coaches are struggling with in-fight adjustments specifically, and that was something that I was going to bring up just because, I mean, we've seen it in the Diego Lopez fight, we've seen it in the last two Grasso-Shevchenko fights where the fight isn't really going necessarily in their favor, and they just tend to, you know, cheer on the fighter rather than give them in-fight adjustments to test something out and try something different and see if that gets them going. So that's just a big negative for me overall. And then more than anything, I think Alexa Grasso is someone who tends to win fights on the back foot more than the front foot. Her footwork when it comes to striking, in terms of her being on the front, it's a little bit too plotty for my liking, and she doesn't really know how to cut off the cage that well. And in my opinion, this fight, to beat Natalia Silva, you have to have good cutting the cage off abilities. I don't know how to word that specifically, but whatever. I think
cage cutting or ring cutting. I got you.
Yeah. Thank you, Liam. That's the type of skill set that you need to beat a fighter like Natalia Silva, who's going to be skirting along the outside of the cage, trying to land those kicks and fast strikes. And she's been shown to be able to do it for 3 rounds and not really tire out or gas out. I do think Alexa might be able to land on her earlier as they're finding their range, because Natalia Silva has shown the capability of getting touched up on the feet a little bit in the first round as she's, you know, moving around and catching her distance. But ultimately, I think Natalia Silva is going to out-volume Alexa Grasso here with the kicks, with the combinations, and then win a 30-27 decision.
There you have it. So we see 2:30-27 decisions and maybe a meme submission from myself. But ultimately, we're all seeing it for the same fighter, Natalia Silva, getting the job done. And it should be a fun and interesting fight. The former champion, a lot to prove here. So let's see if Alexa Grasso can hold serve or if we'll get some divisional turnover, which I think is needed right now at 125 pounds. So let's find out. The 28-year-old gets her biggest opportunity to date on a UFC main card, Natalia Silva. Let's find out if she's real or not. Speaking of, let's find out if Aiemann Zahabi is a bantamweight contender or not. I think that he has certainly earned his opportunity, right, to take this step forward, to go out there and get a really big fight against a big name, a former champion. And guys, Kenny Florian, a name that not everybody in the chat will be super familiar with. But if you've been around this game a long time, if you've been a fight fan for a long time, he's one of the best fighters to never win the UFC belt, fought for it several times, could not break through, but he was an Ultimate Fighter original. Kenny Florian's been around the game for a very long time. And all the way back when he fought Jose Aldo for the title at 145 pounds, you know who was his primary sparring partner? You know who was the guy mimicking Jose Aldo? It was one Aiemann Zahabi, ladies and gentlemen. He has been a TriStar staple for a very long time, does not have the deepest professional resume in terms of fights, but he's a guy that's been around the fight game his entire life. His brother is one of the most legendary coaches in the game, right? Coach George St. Pierre, coaches Arnold Allen and other high-level UFC fighters to this day. So I think that the Zahabi brain trust is very powerful, and I think that they've proven a lot in the UFC. Aiemann on a 5-fight win streak at 37, the best form of his career, beat Javid Basharat before it was the thing to do. And he cashed as a plus 600 underdog in that spot. So the market has given him no credit, no respect. Ricky Tercios closed minus 230 against this guy, did shadow boxing, 15 yards away from him for the duration. So I think ultimately Aiemann Zahabi's been one of the more underrated bantamweights of the last, 5-10 years in the UFC. But on the other side of things, you have one of the greatest champions in the history of the sport, Jose Aldo Jr., one of the greatest fighters I've ever watched personally, one of the guys that got me into this sport, to tell you the truth. I watched a highlight reel, Jose Aldo versus the Korean Zombie. Enter the Korean Zombie. I was like, these two guys are the two coolest guys I've ever seen. So I have to be, chasing down all the footage I can. And, as a young man at the time. So ultimately, I'm a huge Jose Aldo fan. I always will be. The McGregor Aldo build up, one of the greatest parts of my sporting fandom in any sport. But when it comes down to it, timing is everything in mixed martial arts. And I think that right now, Aiemann Zahabi is the best fighter that he's ever been. And he's putting out a very confident version of his product. And I think Jose Aldo used to be a better fighter than he is now. Because he has such a high skill level, he's maintained, he's been able to hang on, find some wins, go out there and do his thing. But I think we've seen a diminished version of his product in recent years relative to his best. And I think ultimately right now, it's Aiemann Zahabi's time. I think he's going to let people know that on Saturday night. And I think people have written this guy off for too long. So give me Aiemann Zahabi for the win, period, point blank. I think he wins this fight, not just odds or what. I think he wins the fight. So give me Aiemann Zahabi. That's my pick. And I'm going to kick it to Pepe to give you guys the alternate perspective because we don't all see eye to eye on this one. Pepe, what do you got?
How confident are you that Zahabi's going to win? Are you very, very confident?
No, I would say I'm small confident. What I would think is if I was to make, a line for this fight, I would make it minus 120 Aiemann Zahabi, plus 100 Jose Aldo. That's the way I see it.
Okay. Yeah. So the way that I see it is that, the guys that Aldo is losing to, let's look at his last 3 losses: Mario Batista, Merab, and Peter Yan. And in his last 4 wins, Jonathan Martinez, Rob Font, Pedro Munoz, and Marlon Vera. And then you go over to the Zahabi side, and he's just fighting like a completely different level of competition, like a couple tiers below the fighters that Aldo is facing. And I think stylistically, it's a good matchup for Aldo because, the way that you beat Aldo is that you cage push him, right? Because you can't take him down. And I don't remember the last person who outstruck Jose Aldo. I mean, Batista didn't. Jonathan Martinez didn't. And both those guys, in my opinion, are higher level strikers than Aiemann Zahabi. Strikers who have better cardio, better output. Now Aldo is getting Zahabi, who is a guy who, he's been getting by, but often it's very close decisions, and on top of that, it's against lower level of competition. He's heavy on his lead leg. We haven't seen Aldo go super leg kick heavy in a while, but these last few fights, like the Martinez fight, I thought was a great performance. The Batista fight, he was pick'em with Mario Batista, who's a top 10 guy, maybe
He
top.
he won that fight, by the way. Between you and me, plus 115 I had on Jose Aldo.
Yeah, on top of that, like I thought he performed excellent. He's still super fast. Like his boxing is even better now than it was before. He doesn't leg kick as much now, and his output isn't as high, but he still is very crisp, and he still has a lot of speed, dude. I think he's just much faster than Zahabi. I think he is going to. I think the thing with Zahabi is like he's really low volume. He doesn't grapple, and those are the things that really give Aldo trouble. So I think the UFC was like, okay, we gave you to Mario Batista. What they do with Aldo now, it seems like, is they give them like these higher level prospects, and if you beat Aldo, you're ready for the top 5. Merab, now Mario Batista, that's a prospect that they're pushing. But then, the Jonathan Martinez's of the world, they're not going to get by Jose Aldo. And that's the category that I put Zahabi in. So I think Aldo is still good enough I think his boxing is still good enough to outpoint Ayman Zahabi and potentially knock him out. I know Aldo hasn't gotten a knockout in a while, but a lot of these guys don't want to stand with him. Like Batista was like, no, I do not want to stand with him. He was getting tagged up. He was, he had to grapple in that fight in order to win. Jonathan Martinez is a high-level striker, almost beat Marcus McGee in his following fight. Took care of Adrian Yanez in under 1.5 rounds. Jose Aldo knocked him down in round 3 and could have finished if he wanted to go for the finish. The thing about Aldo is there's been a couple fights where he's come close to a KO but hasn't finished the job.
How about when I had the fight not to go the distance against Rob Font?
Yes,
dropped him
exactly.
every fucking 2 minutes.
Yeah, so he was one of the first. He was exposing Rob Font's chin before it was cool. Aldo knocked him down multiple times, so he's knocked down Martinez. He's been really fucking close to getting these knockouts. So I wouldn't be surprised. I know Zahabi has a pretty good chin, but like he hasn't really faced like what power punchers has Zahabi faced. Dude, he fought Pedro Munoz, who hasn't won a round in 4 years.
Pedro Munoz won round 1 against Sean O'Malley on every judge's scorecard. Fact check me on that, but I'm not.
That was a while ago now, though. Like that was a few years ago.
Fair play, but they both beat Pedro Munoz with over 100 significant strikes.
Yes, yeah. Javid Basharat, Arichi Lang, Ricky Tercios, like. These guys don't have, they're not top of the level. They're not ranked. They're not heavy hitters. So Zahabi, he seems like he has a decent chin. I wouldn't be surprised if, maybe we get a vintage Aldo KO in this spot.
Fair play, my brother. I'll tell you what. I wouldn't be surprised if Ayman Zahabi puts him in the box. I'll let you continue. But
on top of if you think he has knockout upside, the under must be cheeky, because I think last time I looked, it was
fight doesn't go as plus 255. That is off.
Plus 275 on Bet Online. Under 2.5 plus 295.
Like, do I think it goes to decision more often than not? Yeah, but like I'd make it like 60%.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like 65, not freaking 70+%. Like
yeah, I could see GTD minus 180 or something like that. I think that this price is off on the under.
And I would just say this though, if this price is accurate, I then don't understand the Zahabi money line at all. But I don't know. I could just be misreading this fight, but like, you're going to go to a close decision, right? Like, here's the one thing I'll say. Like, you go back and Jose Aldo, I fucking respect the shit out of it. Like, I bet when he fought Marlon Chito Vera, bro, that fight, you go back and he got his ass whooped in the second round of that fight. Like, Marlon Chito Vera had him figured out in round 2, was starting to land, was starting to connect, and Aldo was like, yo, fuck this. I don't need this shit in my life. And he came out in round 3, grabbed a hold of him, put in the body triangle, and then he won the fight. And I was like, thank you, but I can never bet you again as a favorite. Like, it just looked to me like that was the time where I saw him age out. Like, Aldo in his prime beats the ever-loving shit out of Marlon Chito Vera in every way that you could possibly imagine, in my view. Like, there's just no competitive nature between them. Then it's like he's out there having competitive minutes with that guy, and I was like, oh, sign of things to come. I bet him plus 135 against Mario Bautista, but the market had said, like, this guy isn't even good enough to beat Mario Bautista. And, bro, like, or excuse me, not Mario Bautista. What's his name? Jonathan Martinez. Bro, Jonathan Martinez got fucking knocked dead cold against Davey Grant like 2 years prior. Like, so I just can't get over my skis on Jonathan Martinez. I bet Aldo in both those fights, and I thought at plus money, like, he was the side. But it's like, you look back, and now he's going to cover a minus 200 margin for me. It's like, did he cover a minus 200 margin against either one of those guys? I didn't see that either. Like, I thought he covered plus 115, plus 150, plus 135, whatever it was. But it's like, am I seeing him cover a favorite margin? I'm not really. But please, kick it back to you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I know, like, the Marlon Vera hasn't gotten a win in a while, but like Vera, I don't think Vera's like a bad fighter by any means. Like, you know, Vera was super competitive with Yadong Song. Like, he's competitive with a lot of high level guys. Like, I think he's kind of washed, you know, at this point in his career, but like in his prime, he was competitive with basically everyone he was fighting. And I just don't like who's the best fighter that Zahabi has fought?
I would say that it's probably Pedro, and I thought that it was a clean win. So
it was a clean win, but Pedro is, I think Pedro is, and I mean, you guys will probably admit it too, Pedro is washed at this point. Like, Pedro is easily beat by Kyler Phillips 30-27 in that fight before. He's never had good head movement. He's never had good footwork. You know, when he fought Aldo too, it was the same thing, 30-27, Jose Aldo.
But that's my point. So they go out there, they have the same exact fight against the guy, which is they land more shots, they convincingly win, and then one guy's plus 200. And it's like, that's, for me, the point I don't understand. So it's like, do I think Pedro is washed? I think reasonably so. But here's the other thing, dude. Does he have the best chin in the history of the bantamweight division? Yes. Like, you can literally go through, find me a guy with a better chin in the history of this division, and I'll fucking take my hat off to you. It's like, this guy has fought every puncher, every champion, he doesn't go down. He's fucking invincible. So Amin Zahabi, in my opinion, has underrated power. Like, if you look since 2019, he's 2-1, or excuse me, he's 2-0 career to the knockdown in the UFC. If you look at Jose Aldo since 2019, he's 2-1, and he knocked down Rob Font twice, who, by the way, Rob Font gets knocked down in fucking every fight. He can't help it. Like, every fight he gets knocked out. If he gets touched on the chin, he hits a knee and comes back up. Guy's tough as shit, but he just goes down every time. It's like, all right, that's his concern. On the other side, it's like Zahabi puts down Arichi Lang with 5 punches. He puts down Draco Rodriguez. Both those guys are out cold. Like, instantly, like, touches them and they're out cold. And I would always just pose back. I'm like, when's the last time Jose Aldo colded somebody? Like, fucking put him down.
The thing is, Aldo is fighting a completely different tier of fighter. Like, if you put Aldo in front of Draco Rodriguez or Arichi Lang, like, I think the same thing is going to happen. Like, he's fighting fucking Peter Yan and Merab.
The thing is, though, I agree, but it's like, how does Amin get to that fight? He's got to beat the people that are in front of him, and he's treating them accordingly. Javid Basharat, everybody was telling you that Javid Basharat is the second coming. He's literally going to win the UFC bantamweight title, and then he can't get one takedown on Amin. In my opinion, these guys are very similar fighters. Like, both counter boxers, not going to go out there and like set you on fire with pace. I don't think Aldo's going to do that either. So they both like to sit back, pick their shots, like find the right opportunities. If Aldo comes out leg kicking, I think he's probably going to look like the hindsight favorite, but a lot of the times recently, he's out there to box. And if you want to just go box with Amin Zahabi, I think you're looking at like a 50-50 fight. That's the way I see it. But maybe I'm just retarded. I think that's very possible.
I understand why people would like the Zahabi side at this big plus money. I guess I'm just arguing the Aldo side and why I think he'll win.
I think it's perfectly reasonable. And like the level of competition, there's absolutely no doubt. It's world class. He's fought every great fighter of his generation at 135, 145. Like
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he comes out and, you know, he looks career worst, though. There's always that chance with Aldo after his long career. But at the same time, you know, Zahabi is 37 and a half too. There's not a massive age disparity here.
I think it's about peaking.
Yeah, the damage too.
Yeah, somebody in the chat said Aldo is 100 in fight years. I think that's a little bit overstated, but I do agree. Like, people talk about, like, why was he out of his prime at 31? Because he's been fighting since he was 18. Like, you know, it's like that just for me is like Aldo is a slightly diminished version, but is it possible that diminished version is still better than Aman? I think it's possible. So fair play there. Wiz, what do you think? Be our deciding vote.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard to add anything. You guys have really covered all the points, but I think we spoke about this earlier in the group chat before the stream, and I'm on the Zahabi side. I do like Zahabi in this spot at the plus 170 to plus 180 range. Multiple reasons, just on like the high level side. Career trajectory wise, you guys already covered it. I think Zahabi's on the up, and I'm not saying Aldo is on the way out by any means, but I do think that he does it. He is showing a little bit more in terms of signs of wearing down, and just really focusing on boxing and not really mixing up any kicks or any wrestling at all, which he's never done throughout his career. But as you age, you kind of want to rely on skills like that just to win you some minutes in other ways, especially when you're getting up there in age. Now, obviously, both of these guys are only like a year apart in terms of age, but in fight years, Jose Aldo has, you know, done his fair share and has his experience edge over Aman here. So I think with Aman showing that flash of knockout and power over the last couple of fights, I think he might be able to hurt Aldo here. Not the most convinced that does happen, but I do think that will benefit the dog side with winning moments throughout the fight. That, along with, for me, this is also in Aman's part of the world, in Canada. I'm also a big fan of Aman for, you know, being from my part of the world, so a little bit of a personal bias there. But ultimately, I think that Aman is going to go out there and, you know, put out a very, what's the word I'm looking for here? I think the striking is going to be where this fight plays out for the most part. I think Aman's just going to, you know, be a still low volume, but land the more powerful and more effective shots, win more moments throughout the fight. And I think at dog odds here at plus 170 to plus 180, I'd rather have Aman than an aging Aldo in terms of fight years. So for me, this is
Zahabi. Okay. If Zahabi wins a lackluster split decision, I'm gonna be so fucking pissed.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be so excited.
That is the risk. That is the risk.
I will say, I truly think like that. If you ask me, like, how do you see this fight going? I think either guy is live to win by knockout, and I think either guy is live to win by decision. So that's why I like the Aman Zahabi side. I think Aldo, great puncher, excellent body work, great counters. Like, I think it's probably gonna be tit for tat in the boxing. The things that make me lean towards Aman as like why I like him value-wise, I think he's got a little more knockout power than the market gives him credit for. I think he's got a little bit more, will to win than Jose Aldo at this point. Like, I think Aman Zahabi is all in right now on this is the biggest fight of my life. And I think Jose Aldo's like, yeah, I got another fight on Saturday. Yeah, I've done it a million times. I'll do it again. Like, it just doesn't feel like his Super Bowl. And this is everything for Aman Zahabi that his career has been built to. Please continue.
But the thing is, my counter to that would be I think Aldo probably has a pretty big contract. So if he wins the fight, he probably gets paid doubly. I'd imagine
that's very possible. But a lot of these older guys, bro, get paid like a flat fee, which is like obviously everybody on an entry level does not. But like I think like Orlovsky was getting like 400,000 a show. So he's like, yeah, I'll be there. Like, I'll be there no matter what. Like,
dude, that could play into some corruption. They're like, oh, we got to pay Jose Aldo extra $500,000 if we give him this decision, whereas Zahabi only is making $30,000 on this fight. saving $500,000 by giving this fucking split decision robbery.
And the crowd will be vocally supportive, maybe for the first time ever when Aldo loses.
You don't think the crowd will be rooting for Aldo?
I honestly believe this crowd will at best be split. I do think Amin Zahabi is going to be a local star.
Yeah,
I do think Jose Aldo is an international superstar, so he will get a big reaction. But I do think this will be a split crowd. And normally it's like Aldo or go fuck yourself. Like that is, dude. When he walked out with the crown against Jonathan Martinez, I was already counting the fucking dough. I was like, it's over. Y'all must have forgot the King of Rio with a fucking crown in Rio. Fuck off. But now it's like you're going to the fucking Canadian Alpha's backyard, and he is 4-1 as an underdog for a 212% ROI. No one has fucking printed like Amin Zahabi. So 13 units up. If I fucking lose units on Amin Zahabi this weekend, we'll still be 10 units up no matter what.
But to be clear, you're betting him because you actually think there is value, not because you bet on him before and you're biased, right?
100%. Well, dude, here's the thing. I bet on Jose Aldo his last few fights. So I like to think that I have a pretty good read on these guys, right? Like, again, if you said, Liam, they're running back the Bautista fight, Jose Aldo's plus money. You taking it again? Yeah, I'm taking it again. I thought he won it the first time. I think if he made slight adjustments, he could have won it the second time. But also, Mario Bautista, for me, can't compete with Aldo where he's comfortable. He had to make it cage push, right? Murad Dvalishvili, with all due respect, is not going to fucking compete boxing for boxing with Jose Aldo. So what does he do? He takes the path of least resistance, attempt takedowns against the fence, hold him there. He's not going to try and push his way off. When I look at Amin, do I expect that game plan? Not really. But do I think if he needs it, he could push this guy into the fence, make it the ugliest fight of all time, and try and win like that? I honestly do. But more likely, I think it's probably going to be where both guys are super comfortable, outside, on the feet, moving around. And if nobody goes down, I think they're probably going to throw 68 significant strikes at each other and land 54 of them each. And it's going to be a really close fight, and I think they're going to raise the Canadians' hand. So that's why I felt that way. But I'm never the kind of guy to say, like, Jose Aldo's good. People disrespect this man at their own fucking peril. He's a fucking living legend in the sport. I just think that timing is everything. And I truly believe Amin Zahabi, confidence, physicality, conditioning, preparation, never been better. And I think Jose Aldo, like, he went life and death with Jeremy Stevens, in a boxing match not too long ago. And for me, that's the kind of thing that just says, like, again, in his prime, that's never happening. It's just simply never happening. He's going to dummy that guy up, with all respect to Jeremy Stevens. And I just think that in this one, it's like, for me, I think Amin Zahabi is the guy who's going to get it done. But we have to find out on Saturday. Great fight, and I'm excited for it. Somebody's going to be happy, and if it's a greasy split decision, I hope that it's me. But if it's a clean win, then I'll be happy for whoever gets it done. Next up, guys, we got Valentina Shevchenko, Manon Fiorot. I'm kicking it to my guest first and foremost. Pepe, how do you feel about this one, brother? You zigged when you should have. You zagged when you should have. You've gotten it right with Valentina Shevchenko. You talked about the Grasso plus 660. You were there. You talked about Shevchenko plus 1XX. You were there. So I think two great bets, two really smart bets in hindsight. How do you feel about this one, my man? Are you back to the plus money? Well, is Manon Fiorot the pick to click? What do you think about this?
Yeah, and one of the big reasons why I had bet Grasso in that first one was because I bet Taila Santos in the fight previous, and it was clear that Shevchenko was the chinks in her armor were starting to get exposed. Her physicality isn't what it used to be. You look at the Jennifer Maia fight in round 2. Listen, Jennifer Maia isn't taking anyone down in the division. Jennifer Maia takes Valentina down in round 2. Valentina doesn't get back up. Like, the amount of control that Maia got on Shevchenko was ridiculous. And then, like, okay, so you're going to give me Taila Santos at plus 350 or whatever. It was like plus 350, I think. Like, someone who's a much better wrestler and grappler than Jennifer Maia. I'm going to take that all day. And then Taila Santos was actually the one to actually expose Valentina. It was, coin flip, whatever. I thought Santos got it, but I was biased. So I had to continue to keep betting against Valentina with Grasso. So, yeah, like I zagged last time, went back to Shev at plus money. Here, I think Fiorot is the side. I think Fiorot is going to get it done. Valentina, I think she wanted to write that fight with Alexa Grasso, someone Fiorot is someone that I rate a bit higher than Alexa Grasso because she's got some special attributes that you just can't teach. Her physicality, her takedown defense is absolutely elite, and that is something that fighters like Erin Blanchfield or Alexa Grasso are never going to be able to get to because it's a lot of it is just her physicality. And then you saw when Fiorot fought Jennifer Maya gets Fiorot down in round 2. Fiorot gets right back up. She's not consolidating any time against Fiorot. That was absolutely great to see. Like Fiorot showing that if you take her down, she's going to not waste any fucking time looking for arm bars and dumb shit like Alexa Grasso is. She's getting right back up to your feet. She's going to elbow you. She's going to make you pay for grappling with her. Another thing that I like about Fiorot is her output is really good. You know, in a lot of these fights, Valentina has gotten super gun shy. She likes to sit back and wait for the perfect punch, the perfect shot, and she just seems like she's lacking she's lacking any power whatsoever. I mean, both of these women are point fighters. I just think at this point in their career, Fiorot is the better point fighter. I think she's going to pump out more volume. She's going to fill the space a lot better than Valentina. She could potentially, dude, if Jennifer Maya is getting a full round of control on Shevchenko, why can't Manon Fiorot get a full round of control over Val? We've seen in a couple of Fiorot's fights now, you know, she is just super strong for the weight class. With the judo background, she knows how to leverage her weight in the right ways. She was, you know, slamming Erin Blanchfield left and right. So yeah, I think Fiorot could potentially get on top. She has shown that her takedown defense and get up game is good enough to where Valentina is not going to be able to audit her in the grappling. So now you're looking at a mostly point fight where I'm already shading potential upside for Fiorot in the grappling department. I think the power, the variety, and the output of Manon is going to be enough to where I think she is the side at from a betting angle. What is she, minus 140? You know, I do think it's going to be a relatively close fight. I think this fight goes to decision at a super high clip. They're both very durable. You know, a lot of times when we see a finish at this level, it's because there's a grappling disparity. I don't really see a submission in this fight. I see it going the distance, and I probably placed Fiorot at like minus 150, 60% to get it done. So I like Manon. I think she's going to get it done.
I love the breakdown. You know, I think that you're largely on point here. I tweeted out several months ago. I want to say it was sometime last year. You know, if this fight is booked next, Manon Fiorot is going to be the woman to defeat Valentina Shevchenko. I have been a little bit bullish on Valentina Shevchenko's demise. To your point, I was there with Talia Santos. You know, I thought Alexa Grasso was not as convincing a click, so I clicked her for less than I did Talia Santos. She went out there, got the job done. I was happy about that. Haven't bet on the two most recent ones, but I did pick Grasso. I thought she would be able to get the job done. And unfortunately, you know, Valentina Shevchenko was able to rally back. I thought she probably deserved the win in the second fight. Certainly was very close. I thought the third fight was a dominant performance. I'm still not sold on Valentina Shevchenko. I never have been. I think she's a very, very good fighter. I just think the market thinks she's like the greatest fighter that ever lived, or at least they used to, right? And now she's kind of come back to earth in her last couple fights, which is where she's become more playable as a commodity. And I think when you look at the Manon Fiorot side, last time out was the last time I'll you know, look down on her, so to speak, right? Like I basically thought, you know, you couldn't play Blanchfield, but I thought Blanchfield would eventually submit her, would eventually break her down, find the opportunities, because I think she's probably the best grappler in the division, certainly right up there. And man, I was surprised in some ways. I knew Manon Fiorot was extremely physical, but her ability to defend takedowns without issue, I thought really stood out. You know, in that fight, like really never let Erin get very close on a takedown. The one submission opportunity was actually initiated by, you know, Manon Fiorot. She like grabbed a hold of her, picked her up, threw her sideways, got into a guillotine attempt, rolled out of it, and was able to scramble back to her feet. And I thought that was kind of promising as well, that she was able to scramble through those positions, not panic, get back on her offense. And honestly, Erin Blanchfield is a dog in terms of her toughness, her tenacity. Nothing she wants to do more than come forward and win a fight. Like, she will just do what her coaches say. They say do this, she does it. Goes out there and tries, and very coachable athlete. And unfortunately, she did not have the footwork. She did not have the distance closing ability. She did not have any power to get the respect of Manon Fiorot. So she just countered her with impunity. She used her kicks. She dominated with her angles. She dominated with her footwork. And she showed herself to be levels above. And I used to say that, like, I would make the biggest bet of my life if they had if they had booked Erin Blanchfield and Valentina Shevchenko, because I was certain she was going to submit her. And this was before the Alexa Grasso fight. I was like, I know that if Erin Blanchfield gets this opportunity, she's going to take her down. Not like Talia Santos, who's a blue belt. I was like, this girl, I've seen her submit black belts. She will absolutely beat her if she gets her on the ground. Then Grasso goes out there and absolutely nukes the submission edge. Brutal. But you go back and think about it, it's like, that's how I felt years ago. I was like, I am sure of it. So now I've seen Erin Blanchfield go out there, and she had physically nothing to offer Manon Fiorot. So are they different matchups? Yes. But I look at this and I say to myself, Valentina Shevchenko normally likes to be the bully. She likes to be the stronger physical athlete, and I don't think she is here. I think the stronger physical woman is Manon Fiorot, and I think that if she grabs a hold of her, she can pick her up and turn her sideways like she did Erin Blanchfield. I think the difference is Erin Blanchfield has a world-class guillotine series, and Valentina Shevchenko does not. So I think if she gets picked up, she's going to hit the deck and get pinned like she did against Jennifer Maia. And I think that if Manon Fiorot hits the deck, she's more likely to scramble up to her feet and not accept bottom position. So ultimately, it's not an easy fight to call. Valentina does have a well-rounded game. She's got arm bars off her back. She's got an ability to mix things up from different positions. She will try to win, whether it's with spinning kicks, head kicks. Like, she'll try and put out damaging offense. She won't just let you off the hook all night. But I don't see her combinations being as effective. I don't see her striking being as consistent and thorough. I see her being a little bit slower. I don't see her being as physical. So I think, unfortunately, the right woman is favored. I would love to see, some huge money come in on Valentina. I do think there are sharps out there, as well as, recreational players that will be big on the Valentina side, because she's a great champion at plus money. I think that's going to, get some people involved. But ultimately, I think people are going to discredit Manon being 35. Again, you got to earn your opportunities. They don't just give them to you, right? She's been in the UFC. She's been taking the fights they give her. She's been winning. So now she finally gets her opportunity. It took her till 35. And I think this is her Super Bowl. Like I mentioned for Ayman Zahabi, like for some of these fighters, guys, this is the one chance they might get at this kind of fight. And for other fighters, it's just another day at the office, another big pay-per-view, another big main event. And it's like, I just think Valentina Shevchenko's been at the mountaintop. And, unless it's a champ versus champ, unless it's a new weight class belt, like I just don't know how much motivation she can really drive to push herself every day. And I know that Manon Fiorot wants to be the first French champion. I believe that she's got the skills to pay the bills. So give me Manon Fiorot as my pick. I think she's going to get the job done. Wiz, how do you feel about this one, brother? Woman on woman crime.
Yeah, I've been a lifelong Manon Fiorot truther for those that have followed my track betting career. I've bet her in almost every matchup, and for good reason. I just like overall when a female fighter has the physicality of Manon Fiorot that pairs along with the agility of the striking that she has. At a high clip, she can win rounds effectively with volume and with her own power. I like the side kicks to the body. I like the jab that she has, and she's very quick with her striking. And I think more so than anything, the fact that this fight is the biggest opportunity of Fiorot's career, going up against Shevchenko, who has tasted glory not once but twice, has been through the ups and downs of her career, and is starting to, I wouldn't say right off into the sunset just yet. She still is champ, and she could very well continue in another championship reign for another couple of fights. But for me, I think Fiorot is going to be the much faster striker and the much more accurate striker here. A lot of people are counting on Valentina Shevchenko to go out there and put on the singlet and land takedowns, which you guys, I think, broke it down perfectly. I'm not even going to try and add anything to it. But Fiorot just pops up very quickly from the ground whenever she gets taken down. And she just does it very urgently. She doesn't fish for any subs. She doesn't really go for any arm bars off the back. So that's one positive. And then more than anything, I think that Valentina is going to have a tough time finding her just because of the movement. So for me, this is a Fiorot spot through and through, and I think we have a and new this Saturday.
Well, the market sees it the same way that we do, gentlemen. Hopefully, we'll get some buyback on the other side if we are looking to get involved. But ultimately, we're seeing it all the same way, guys. And new, Manon Fiorot, the beast, is taking out the bullet in French-speaking Montreal, Quebec, Canada, in front of the French-speaking locals. Oui. One more new champion. All right, let's find out, guys. We got the main event of the evening. Extremely exciting booking. Belal Muhammad, you don't always say that about his fights. You always say he's high level, he's an elite fighter, but do you say it's always going to be exciting? Not every time. I think this one has a lot of propensity to be exciting. Jack Della Maddalena, he's that kind of dude. He's been in a lot of fun fights, handful of stinkers, short notice against Basel Hafez, maybe not his greatest look in the UFC, but ultimately 3-name Jack. He lost his first 2 fights as a pro. He's won every fight since, 17 in a row, 7 up in the UFC, 7 down, and put Gilbert Burns on a milk carton. So I think when you look at this guy's performances, he's an excellent fighter. He's a dangerous guy. He's got knockout ability. Randy Brown, he hurt him so bad, jumped on his neck, showed that he's got finishing instincts. I'm excited about this one, guys. I'm going to kick it over to Wiz first, my brother. I know you've got, a time constraint, so if you got to get out of here after your breakdown, please, do your thing. Just wanted to give you the floor. How do you see this main event going down, my man? UFC 315, who gets the job done?
Yeah, I'll be leaving right after the breakdown because I need to get jiu-jitsu practice. But for this fight, I think early money on 3-name Jack, as you would call him, Liam. I think early money was good at plus 205, plus 210. Right now, the plus 155 number, not really as inspired, I would say, because I do see a world where he has no answer for the takedowns. We haven't really seen him give us the answer in terms of him getting taken down by high-level competition and getting up with people that have a high class in terms of wrestling. I'm not going to say Gilbert Burns is not a good fighter, because obviously he is, and multiple-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion. And the issue with Gilbert is his takedowns weren't really all the best. So that's what I mean here by someone who has world-class wrestling. Belal is someone that's going to come at you in multiple different angles. He's going to shoot different takedowns. It's not always going to be a single leg or a double. There's going to be the body locks. He'll mix in a couple of different takedowns into his threat. And it's just going to be a matter of if Jack Della can defend the takedowns early enough and get Belal to gas out and fatigue, so that way he's able to land on him. Because the one thing about Jack, more than anything that I've realized while watching tape for this fight, is he's more of I would say, an attritional striker in terms of his damage than anything. He has had some early finishes in his career, but I mean, who are they really against? Not really the best competition. So for me, I think this is a Jack late finish spot if that does end up happening. Or I think Belal just, wins a somewhat boring but dominant decision here with the takedowns and just control time. Now, if this line continues to go any further towards Belal, where it's like, minus 150, minus 140, I think that's where I'll probably be interested. But until then, I think the line is fine where it's at right now. I do predict that at some point, Jack Della can find some moments to win, and, he might be able to capitalize on them and finish Belal in this fight. But I've seen time and time again, Belal has shown the fight IQ, comes from a really good gym at VFS in Chicago, where most guys at that gym have come out there and done their thing. Ignacio Bahamondes winning via sub against Jalen Turner last time out. They have a couple of guys that are up and coming in the UFC too. So for me, I think it is a Belal spot. At the current odds, it's a pass. Early number, as I mentioned, I would favor Jack Della. But guys, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Sorry for having to leave too early, but I'm sure I'll see you guys next week on the show. Pepe, it's a pleasure talking fights with you as always. Thank you for the great breakdowns. We really appreciate it. And then Liam, I will see you next week, my brother.
Absolutely.
Yes,
cheers to you, my man. Get your training in. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Good luck on all your bets, and we'll talk to you very soon, Brother Wiz.
My guys, I appreciate it.
Hell yeah. Safe travels, my man. Talk soon. Pepe, What do you think, my brother? We got a world title fight. We got an interesting challenger. He's taking money, right? Wiz brought it up, open, a little bit closer to that plus 2XX range in terms of fight week, right? And now we're looking at plus 175s and on down from there. How do you see this one going down? Do you think there's any value to be had?
Honestly, yeah, I think the move on JDM was sharp, to be honest with you. I think it was the right move to make market wise. Yeah, overall, I just think it's going to be a really competitive fight. It's an honest scrap against two guys who I don't even think are the top. I don't even think are the top two guys in the division, but they're fighting for the title right now. And I think where they're at, I think Della is actually, I think Della's the side, honestly. People are going to hold the Basil Hafez performance against him. And he did get stuck on his back for periods of that fight. But overall, he's shown that he's improved a lot in the grappling realm. And, the thing with Belal is like, he doesn't have like any finishing upside. I think Della is going to be the cleaner boxer. I think Della has shown that he can scramble quite well. He's 8 years younger. He's more in his prime. So honestly, I think this is going to be a really competitive fight. I think this fight is going to go the distance. And I think Jack Della is going to win by decision. The decision prop on Jack is like plus 550. I think a lot of people are, they might bet Belal decision only because, Belal only wins by decision. And, Jack has to win by KO. And it's going to be one of those fights where, the books scoop and Della is the one that wins by decision. Ultimately, he has some finishes in the UFC, but he's more of a volume puncher, to be honest. Like, he doesn't have a ton of one-shot knockout power. And the thing with Belal is I think that, like, Belal is just not going to let him, like, just, flurry on him. Belal is going to be diving at ankles, sniffing crotch, pushing him up against the fence. And, like, you saw against, like, Hafez and Burns, like, they were able to avoid striking situations with Jack by, like, avoiding them and diving at, Hafez attempted 20 takedowns. He only got 3 of them. And, like, listen, Hafez is like, he's not even that good. His wrestling and grappling is not that great. He got audited by Oban Elliott recently. And, yeah, I think Belal is just going to be able to chain takedowns together to avoid the uncomfortable striking. And I think ultimately be able to stay alive to not get knocked out, but ultimately lose the decision. So I like Della money line, Della money line, GTD, and Della by decision. Those are the ways that I'm seeing this fight go.
I think that's totally reasonable. My gut on this fight, man, says it's JDM or pass at the big plus money. You kind of hit on the nail, which is like Belal Muhammad, very good fighter, but not a super dangerous finisher, right? I mean, Gilbert Burns essentially like blew out his shoulder in the first 2.5 minutes of that fight, and they went the full 25, right? And you go back and look prior to that fight. I basically thought Belal was going to get the job done against Gilbert. I thought that was a very winnable fight for him. He's a very defensively responsible guy in Belal. So I was just like, I don't think Gilbert's going to take him out. So it's going to need to be a really savvy performance from Gilbert to win. And, going into that, if you remember, Belal had like a terrible looking ankle injury going into that one. And so I was like, oh God, I can't get involved here. But you look back at that market, and the market was basically 50-50. Like, people didn't know who was going to win the fight, maybe a slight lean towards Belal. I think before the injury rumors, but like ultimately it was a very close line. Against JDM, like the market was pretty bullish on JDM. He's like minus 165, minus 175. And when he goes out there for that fight, number one, I agreed with Sal D'Amato, which is never a place you want to be, but he gave the second round to JDM I did too. I thought JDM probably lost the first round, although it was close. If I'm misremembering, basically, I thought one of the rounds should have went to JDM. I thought one of the rounds went to Gilbert, and I thought it should have been 1-1 going into that third round. And Gilbert was doing some smart things, like trying to push the wrestling, trying to push the grappling, trying to stay on top. But it did seem like every time they would get into contentious exchanges on the feet, Gilbert wasn't liking how it was feeling, right? It was a lot different, the power that was coming back at him. And so he was forced to grapple. He was forced to be a little more desperate with his opportunities. I think Belal realized against Leon Edwards, like the guy's allergic to pressure. Just watch that Sean Brady fight. If you guys don't believe me, watch it. Because they both did the exact same thing. Like Belal did the same game plan that Sean Brady stole and did better, which is just pressure this guy and make him give up because he doesn't want to be there if it's a hard position over and over, if it's hard situations. Usman's a good grinder, right? But he really doesn't put you in a situation where you're like, I'm out of here. Like I can't survive down here. He's not that pressure heavy. He's just like wrestling, right? Like he's wrestling you, he's holding you, he's stomping your feet. Like ultimately, if you're a cage fighter, that's not the worst fate, right? Like somebody stomping your feet and kneeing you in the thigh a little bit. It sucks, but it's more just a nuisance, an inconvenience. You're losing time and minutes. Against JDM, dude, like every exchange that you have, like he's trying to take your life away. Like this guy is just a violent fighter. And when I go back and watch that fight with Leon, the moments where Belal would make small mistakes, like they almost turned into really big catastrophic mistakes, right? Like there was times at the end of the fight, Belal is exhausted. Leon is on top of him, dropping hammer elbows. Dude, Belal is bleeding everywhere. That literally looks like the end of the Gilbert fight, right? It's like Gilbert on bottom getting his face smashed. If you guys remember, they had to like reorient where the ref, JDM, and everybody was standing because they couldn't get Gilbert up off the mat, bro. Gilbert was down for the count. Bad knockout. Horrible knockout. So it wasn't the knee. It was the follow-up ground and pound elbows where JDM is frankly ruthless. I think when you look at like different parts of the world, people have different reactions to violence. Like some people are like will withhold, right? They won't keep going. Bro, other people, it's not even a reservation. Ding, ding. Like they will keep pounding somebody that's already out. No remorse, right? That's JDM to me. Like this guy is all in, play for keeps. Like you can do the same thing to me. I get it. It's a cage fight. But he's all in on doing violence to his opponent, man. Like this guy is a killer. And I just don't think Belal's the same. Like I think Belal is a sportsman, a competitor, a guy who's got real skills. But like you put these two guys in an alley, I think JDM comes out every time. And like that for me is why he's the click at plus money. I think Belal, like again, you put him in a wrestling match, I think he wins. You put him in a jiu-jitsu match, it could go either way. You put him in a kickboxing match, maybe he outlands him on volume. You put these two guys in an alley, there's one knife on the ground. I think JDM kills this guy every time. And that's just, I think maybe a crazy way to handicap the fight, but I look at psychology. I look at every part of it that I can. I really think Belal wanted to prove that he was as good as he said he was. He got the belt. He did that. Now he's 36, going on 37, coming off a horrible, medical incident. But without going into the details, y'all can look up the details if you want. Hospitalized, serious medical problems. Now he's got to come back from that to fight a guy who's very dangerous, in my opinion, very active off the ground, does not settle in bottom position. Gilbert Burns, he's basically got his back with 2 minutes left. That's a very winnable fight for a jiu-jitsu world champion. Man said, I'm hitting scrambles. I am not settling here. I will either lose this fight rolling around on the ground or I will win this fight by getting back up to my feet. That's the kind of guy I want money on. A guy who's going to give everything. And if he dies trying, he dies trying. I just think JDM is not going to give up this fight for free. I think he's going to fight till the very bitter end for 25 hard minutes and look to finish. If you give him one opportunity, he's going to try and take you out. So for me, the pick to click on the main event this week was Jack Della Maddalena over 2-1. I'm going to wait and see what happens with this line. I would not be surprised if this has a little bit of tug of war action, my man, because I do think, people will be buying on both sides. Belal, typically done well as an underdog. He's done well as a favorite as well. I want to be very clear. Belal Muhammad deserves respect, but his recent run has been as a dog because he's been fighting quality guys. Most of the guys, you go through and look at the list of guys, Diego Lima and these guys that he's been big favorites against. I mean, with all due respect, 40-year-old Damian Maia, not 28-year-old, 7-0 in the UFC, top contender form, Jack Della Maddalena, who's all in on this, right? Like, again, some of these guys are rich. Some of these guys have other pursuits. They've got other things going on. Jack Della Maddalena is a fucking cage fighter with a nose on the other side of his face that's basically said, I'm raising money for the biggest opportunity of my life. Y'all donate here at this link. He's trying to do anything he can to put himself in a position to succeed right now because this is his time and his opportunity. And Belal Muhammad took the long, hard road to the belt, and I think that's going to show on Saturday because they did not set him up for success. They've given him a very difficult road, and now he's got to defend from a position of weakness, which is 36, right? Already had a lot of fights, already had a lot of hard fights, had some injuries and some health stuff to deal with. I think he's a good fighter and a deserving champion, but I don't think he's going to hold the belt for a long time. I think Jack Della is coming for that strap.
Yeah, I think both these guys are like 100% all in with their career. I think Belal takes his career extremely serious. I think the difference is like Della kind of seems like he has more hate in his heart with the way that he fights. And I think that's kind of the point that you were trying to make. And it's something that you can't teach, right? It's just something that is natural to certain people. Whereas Belal is much more of like a peaceful guy. Like, don't get me wrong. He's serious when he's fighting and like, he's not fucking around.
He's skilled.
But he's skilled, but like you can tell he's like he has a really good heart. He's a real nice guy. You know, I think it goes against his nature to hurt people. Honestly, that's what it seems like, anyways. But yeah, I'm interested to see where this line goes, where it ends up by fight day. You know, if people are going to be interested in Belal, you know, given his grappling upside and being much more proven on the streak that he is. I don't really know where this line is going to go, to be honest.
Yeah, and the one thing I wanted to also put out there, because I know you had said the decision, and I do think that's a very real possibility. Like, I think if this goes the distance, it's probably a close fight where Belal is going to be relying on the wrestling, the top time, getting some minutes on top. I don't think he's the most damaging top player, though.
No, he could put a triangle in, though, a body triangle.
That's what I mean. He needs minutes. Like, he needs, control. He needs to hold him down. I don't think he's going to beat him up too bad from the top position. I think that if they play out on the feet, I think Belal can do a decent enough job competing on volume. He showed some good instincts against Leon in terms of, hey, I'm throwing out a jab so I can disguise my shots, get in on some other opportunities. He did a lot of things right, but you also just saw, like, in those sequences where they created space, or even when Leon got some reversals, got on top, made him make some bad decisions in the grappling. I think JDM is a really opportunistic grappler. Just watching the way he was moving against Gilbert, watching the way he hurt Randy, and Randy was off his legs, didn't have legs underneath him, so he just took his neck right away. That's really good killer instinct, and that's the difference for me with Belal. Belal can, dude, even watch the fights that he's had where, Damian Maia and these other guys, he's beating him up, he's landing some shots, he's doing his thing. He's just not really good at putting the finishing touch on somebody, getting them out of there, showing he's the better guy. And I think the exact opposite is true of JDM. If he has a moment of opportunity, he's going to capitalize. The only fight I think I picked against this guy in the UFC so far was when he was fighting Kevin Holland. I bet Angelusa on Contender Series way back. And if you remember, that was his most competitive fight. And then he went on a great streak. But if you look, I basically said the Kevin Holland fight, I thought Kevin would win by split decision. And it ended up being a close split decision. When it's just the two guys striking and they're just sometimes he just gets into those kind of fights. But Kevin is a damaging guy. You got to really respect Kevin's power coming back, or he can knock you the fuck out. And I just don't think that's true of Belal. So I think Jack is going to be way more open with his offense.
Were you?
No, please go ahead.
Were you? Did you bet Ramazan Ameev versus Della?
No, I was not on that train.
No,
remember JDM.
Remember Ameev had him in a real tight.
Dude, a serious Darce attempt, but his whole side was turning purple. I was like, that's not going to end well.
I think the reason why people have thought that Della can be had in the grappling is because on the Angelusa fight on Contenders, he was in a super deep arm triangle. The Ameev fight, he almost gets submitted. So as soon as this guy gets to step up in competition, he's going to get submitted. But now all of a sudden he's been able to, granted he's young, he's actually adding skills. He's actually getting better. He's showing more intelligence in the grappling department. He's showing unworldly physicality and cardio and pace. The guy seems like he can fight, he's perfect for 25 minutes, honestly. So Yeah, it's a really intriguing fight. I kind of lean Della outright.
I think I'm gonna end up going the same way. I got to think about it a little bit more. I think from like a pure daily fantasy perspective, I could definitely see the merit on Muhammad because he's just a consistent doer of things.
Yes.
But I mean, just in my view, like I see Della as live by all methods here, and that's why I think he's a live underdog.
It sounded like you were kind of hinting at the Della sub by the.
I mean, dude, somebody asked me about it, and I don't know if they want it out there, so that's why I kind of beat around the bush a little bit. But
well, I don't think I don't think a lot of people are going to be betting that, anyways.
Well, here's my premise, right? Number one, have we seen him like spam guillotine attempts? Like, yeah, definitely. Do I think you're going to choke Belal Muhammad? Like, here's my honest belief: Belal is a good grappler, but a guy that hasn't been put in that many bad positions. And when he has, sometimes it's looked a little dangerous. I mean, like, let's be honest. Leon Edwards had his back and put him in some bad situations for a long time. Also, he made a few positional mistakes where he got reversed and gave up his back and did some things wrong going for his offensive grappling. Jack Della is a guy that's shown he will attempt offense from every position, period, point blank. If he hurts you, he does not discriminate, right? Like he will do what it takes to get you out of there. So for me, those are all things that are interesting. And I think of Belal as a guy that's like, honestly, I think of both these guys as guys that are like, not going to give up. You armbar them, snap it in half. Like, go ahead. Like, they're just those kind of guys, right? And I think the way you beat a guy like that, I've always said, is you can't tough guy a choke. You just go to sleep like everybody else, right? Like Michael Bisping, toughest motherfucker there ever lived. He's bleeding out of his face against GSP, and dude's just like fighting the air. Like, he went to sleep like everybody else. Like, you can't be too tough to go to sleep to the choke. So it's like, that's what I see as like the number one way to take out a really tough guy. Don't give him a chance, right? You put him in a choke, put him to sleep. I think of that as being the number one way to finish these two guys. Like, you got to choke them to sleep or knock them dead. And I think that the chances of somebody getting knocked dead is Belal probably gets knocked out with a big punch. But like, other than that, even if either one of these guys got hurt, like they're going to give everything to stay in the fight. And the way you get somebody is punch them really hard. So now they're not thinking clearly and their defense is terrible, and then grab a hold of their neck and put them out. So that for me is a sneaky angle here and something I will definitely consider. But ultimately, I like the money line on JDM, and that's where I think my primary investment will be.
Well, the thing is, if you watch the way Della defends takedowns, like he's jumping for guillotines all the time. I honestly think that's when he's fighting at his worst, is when he's jumping for guillotines to defend takedowns. But I do think that he is working on his grappling, and he has some potential slick submission upside. I wouldn't be surprised if he was able to, turn. It's going to be a crazy fight, dude. It's going to be a full mixed martial arts fight. There's going to be striking. There's going to be grappling, wrestling, jiu-jitsu. It's going to be a war. I think it's going to go late, in my opinion. So, I wouldn't be surprised if Della is able to lock something up, rounds 3 to 5 or something.
That would be awesome. I will say this, man. I remember before the Gilbert Burns fight, what sold me on picking Jack ultimately was I listened to a video from Craig Jones a while ago, and he was like, there's one guy in the UFC, like, because if you guys remember, when people were all of a sudden like, yo, Volkanovski can grapple, like, what happened? It was Craig Jones, in my humble opinion. Behind the scenes, he started paying him to be his grappling coach and like, come to camp with me. And you saw against Makhachev how much that paid off. Craig Jones, for all the joking around and all the gimmicks and marketing and everything else, one of the best grapplers in the world. Very sophisticated guy, and a guy that takes his responsibility in a fight corner seriously. He understands these guys are trying to hurt each other. These guys are trying to go home to their family safe. Like, it's a serious business. So when Craig does all the gimmicks and the joking stuff, you take that on one hand, but he did an interview where he was talking about like, what about Volkanovski and whatever. And then he's like, this guy, Jack Della, he's like, he's a freak athletically. He's like, he's strong as shit, and he's going for it all the time. He's like, he's getting better every day. He's the guy to watch out for. Don't fuck with this guy. Like, and I was like, okay, if Craig is telling me like this guy is not to be fucked with on the ground, then he goes out there and sweeps Gilbert Burns, and you're like, I understand. Like, he is not a perfect grappler, but he's one of these guys that is like a blue belt submitting black belts in his gym. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of guy that he is. And I just think JDM right now, I believe in where he's headed. So whether he wins this fight or not, I think he's a very good fighter. Somebody asked in the chat, like, how would he do against Brady? Probably the worst matchup for him in the division, certainly right up there. But when you think about it, if you cannot hold this guy down and dominate him physically, he's going to try and hurt you for the duration of the fight, and he's creative about it. He'll do it with knees, he'll do it with elbows, he'll do it with punches. And if you make one mistake, put your head in a bad spot, get out of position, he will try and make you pay by any means necessary. So that's the kind of guy I'm looking to put money on.
Also, Craig Jones is like the best follow on Instagram. Like the dude is fucking hilarious, bro. Like every day he's posting like entertaining content, which is saying a lot.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. My man, I want to say thank you so much for coming, brother. It's always a pleasure every time. I feel like two of the best handicappers in New York. There's a lot of great ones, but I take pride in that, and I know that you do as well. My brother, anything that you got to say to the people, anything you want to get off your chest, I did include your betmma.tips as well as your Twitter account in the description box below if anybody's looking for more from Pepe. But Pepe, please, the floor is yours, my brother.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. It was a blast. Really looking forward to this card. I'm not selling picks anymore. I'm done with that venture. Now I'm more interested in collaborating with other people, getting accounts for people, exchanging PPH accounts. If anyone wants to work with me, team up with me, help get me accounts, swap accounts, I would love for that. Follow me on Twitter, send me a DM. I'm sure we have mutuals who can vouch for you. And thanks for having me on, Liam. Really looking forward to this card. It was a blast.
Absolutely, brother. The pleasure is all mine, guys. We got UFC 315. It's going down this weekend. I'll have more content out later in the week, but for now, hope that you guys enjoyed. Hope that you guys have best of luck on all your bets. God bless. Good luck. Enjoy the fights. Come back next time. We're having all the same fun again. Thanks, everybody. Take care.